Chapter 568. Hee. Elder Husanquin chuckled when he heard the white-clothed man's words, after which his gaze once again shifted towards the 70-year-old Elder Qingyang, who was sitting cross-legged on a rock not far away. Elder Husanquin secretly shifted his gaze, as though he was really afraid that Elder Qingyang would forcefully snatch his disciple away. He opened his mouth and probed. Elder Qingyang, I feel that there are still a few disciples who are not bad. Now that they have already reached the testing main peak, Elder Qingyang can choose one of them to be your disciple. Perhaps under Elder Qingyang's nurturing, they will be able to surpass their peers and help our ancient sky sect become famous in the Central Plains in the future. Elder Qingyang, who had a sage-like demeanor, glanced at Elder Husanquin on his extremely ruddy face when he heard this. Finally, he simply shut his eyes and completely ignored Elder Husanquin. His aloof manner caused one to feel deep respect for him. Seeing this, the surrounding large men and old men revealed a knowing smile. Elder Husanquin did not say anything, but he began to feel uneasy in his heart. He was really afraid that Elder Qingyang would snatch his disciple away. If Elder Qingyang was determined to snatch his disciple away, even the sect leader would not be able to do anything about it. That young man doesn't seem to be a disciple of our Manchu. He actually went up the main peak. Suddenly, a beautiful woman looked at the mountain in front of her from afar. Her eyes moved slightly, and she had an extraordinary temperament. One could tell that she was definitely an extremely beautiful woman when she was young. Hearing the beautiful woman's words, the surrounding gazes immediately looked over in surprise and curiosity. Even Elder Qingyang, who had his eyes closed just now, opened his eyes slightly at this moment. His eyes seemed to be slightly closed as he looked at the testing main peak in front of him. It should be known that according to the testing standards of the past years, although there were very few young people from outside the sect who could pass the test and directly become an inner sect disciple of the ancient sky sect, there was no one who could ascend the main peak so quickly. What's going on? Why isn't the leopard demon wolf at the peak of the perfect martial marquis stage attacking that boy? That's strange. That boy doesn't seem very old. Where did he come from? That boy actually directly charged into the talisman formation under the gazes of many powerhouses. After a moment, an extremely unexpected ripple suddenly appeared in their eyes. The huge mountain that was as dark and boundless as it could be. It was like a huge tomb that stood among the mountain ranges. On the mountain, Du Xiaofu saw a talisman formation in front of it. There seemed to be people in the talisman formation. There seemed to be people trying to break the talisman formation. Bang, 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 bang. Within the talisman formation, numerous extraordinary young men and women with imposing appearances were joining forces with a few similarly extraordinary young men and women to break the formation, and all of them were in extremely sorry states. Suddenly, these young men and women saw a purple-robed young man who seemed to be in a sorry state and had a deathly pale face barge into the formation. His body was wrapped in a faintly discernible golden five-fingered mountain phantom, and waves of extremely shocking aura spread out, causing one's heart to tremble. At this moment, other than Du Xiaofu, there was no one else who was wrapped in the five-finger mountain shadow. Du Xiaofu looked at the few extraordinary young men and women who were working together to fight against the talisman formation, and was secretly shocked. He did not know where these young men and women came from. They were all at the peak of the martial marquis realm. There was also a peak 5 stars talisman master. Among them, there was also a peak martial king realm cultivator. The average age of these young men and women was only 23 or 24 years old. However, each and every one of them had such a cultivation level. Du Xiaofu couldn't help but be shocked. I'm sorry to disturb you. Du Xiaofu glanced at the few people, and without any delay, his figure directly passed through the talisman formation, not affecting the talisman formation in the slightest. He directly passed through the talisman formation as if there was no one around, and quietly disappeared. Could it be that I'm seeing things Looking at this scene, several young men and women directly rubbed their eyes in shock, thinking that they were seeing things. They couldn't believe the scene in front of them. On the mountain peak in the distance, dozens of gazes were also surprised at this moment. They looked at each other in surprise. At this moment, even Elder Qingyang, whose eyes were slightly closed, slightly raised his eyebrows. His eyes also widened a lot, and he continued to stare at the Test Mountain peak in front of him. A long-robed old man looked at the mountain peak in front of him with an extremely surprised gaze. He couldn't hold back the surprise in his heart and said, "What's going on? Why did that kid come out of the talisman formation?" While everyone on the mountain peak was still puzzled, the mysterious purple-robed young man on the Test Mountain continued to break into the second talisman formation under everyone's surprised gazes. Did you see that? That kid seems to have deliberately broken into the talisman formation. A plain-clothed old man said in surprise. Could it be that the kid knows that no matter how he goes up the mountain, there will be a talisman formation blocking him? So he wants to break into the talisman formation and join forces with them to break the formation. There seems to be something strange about that kid. Numerous gazes continued to stare at the Test Mountain peak. After a short period of time, everyone's gazes fiercely trembled again. Chi! Under everyone's shocked gazes, they saw the mysterious purple-robed young man directly break out of the second talisman formation. After a few flashes, his speed was like lightning as he continued to climb halfway up the mountain and entered the third talisman formation under everyone's shocked gazes. In a short few breaths, the mysterious purple-robed young man broke out of the third talisman formation again. In front of the purple-robed young man, each and every one of the powerful talisman formations seemed to be unstoppable. It was as if nothing could stop him. Huff, huff! On the mountain peak, those extraordinary super experts had already started to suck in a breath of cold air at this moment. Their faces completely changed from shock. At this moment, Elder Qingyang, who was sitting cross-legged, had his eyes glowing as he stared intently at the testing main peak. After that, while those super experts were still sucking in a breath of cold air, they saw the mysterious purple-robed young man continue to break into the fourth talisman formation. This is already the last talisman formation. The last talisman formation is a 6-star initial ascension talisman formation. Moreover, it is a killing formation that is at the bottom of the 6-star initial ascension talisman formation. Could that kid break out of it so easily? As Du Xiaofu once again broke into the last talisman formation, those super experts on the mountain peak in the distance were even more shocked. After that, everyone looked at each other and seemed to have thought of something at the same time. Their faces suddenly turned solemn at the same time. Elder Husanquin looked at the Test Mountain peak in front of him and paid attention to the movements within the talisman formation with a solemn expression. Rumble! The terrifying talisman formation enveloped the mountainside, causing winds and clouds to surge on the huge mountain peak. The aura was terrifying and monstrous. Inside the talisman formation, a young man in a black robe was wrapped in a white circle of runes. He was holding a semicircular machete in his hand and was constantly attacking the talisman formation, looking for a hole in the talisman formation in an attempt to break out. Suddenly, within the talisman formation, the purple-robed young man, who was wrapped in a faint, golden five-finger mountain, broke into the talisman formation. "Sorry to disturb you. Please continue." After leaving behind these words in the talisman formation, the mysterious purple-robed young man, who had broken into the talisman formation without affecting any changes in the talisman formation, directly disappeared in the blink of an eye under the dumbfounded gaze of the young man in the black robe. Looking at the mysterious purple-robed young man who had disappeared, the young man in the black robe was shocked and puzzled. It was as if he was in a dream. If he was not still in the dangerous talisman formation that was filled with danger, he would probably think that he was dreaming. He's out. That kid really came out. At that moment, on the mountain peak in the distance, the super experts' eyes were already about to pop out of their sockets. That mysterious purple-robed young man had actually escaped from the 6-star initial ascension talisman formation with ease. It was as if he was still in an uninhabited state. How is this possible? Where did that kid come from? At that moment, Elder Husankuin was even more dumbfounded. The young man in the black robe who was trapped in the last talisman formation was his precious disciple, Feng Xiangyu, who he had recently accepted. He had the talent of a human king and had already stepped into the martial king realm. Originally, at that moment, as long as Feng Xiangyu could break through the talisman formation, he would be able to take first place in the testing area and obtain the treasures rewarded by the Manchu. At that time, it would be enough to bring glory to his sect. However, at that moment, a mysterious purple-robed young man who had appeared out of nowhere had directly charged up the mountain peak from the foot of the mountain as if he was in an uninhabited state. In a short period of time before anyone could react, he had already broken through the final test that no outer disciple of the Manchu had been able to break through. Silently, he had arrived at the mountain peak like a ghost. Things don't look good. On the mountain peak, everyone looked at each other with flickering eyes. Buffed! On the mountain peak in the distance, the 4th talisman formation had escaped. Du Xiaofu once again spat out a mouthful of blood in a rather miserable manner. Activating the pulse spirit could allow one to ignore the talisman formations, but it was definitely not without a price. In this situation where he was already an arrow at the end of its flight, activating the pulse spirit on the mountain peak was something that Du Xiaofu could no longer endure. If it were not for his abnormal physique, an ordinary cultivator would have already collapsed. After the 4th talisman formation had broken through, there were no more talisman formations in front of him. At that moment, he had already reached the peak of the mountain. Du Xiaofu withdrew the faintly discernible phantom of the pulse spirit, and his gaze immediately fell on a rock not far away. The second watch has arrived. I beg for fresh flowers and love. Chapter 569. On the boulder, Du Xiaofu saw a Qiankuan bag with faint ripples of energy. Could it be that someone accidentally left the Qiankuan bag behind? Du Xiaofu glanced at his surroundings. It seemed that he did not see anyone nearby. Immediately, he grabbed the Qiankuan bag in an extremely natural manner, after which he swaggered off and left the mountain peak in an instant. At this moment, Du Xiaofu did not notice that there were over a dozen pairs of eyes on a mountain peak that reached into the clouds in the distant sky. At this moment, they were so shocked that their eyeballs were about to fall out. It was difficult for them to recover from the shock on their faces. The Manchu-S reward has been taken by that brat. Only after a while did the people on the mountain regain their senses. The mysterious purple-robed youth had actually walked up to the main testing peak without any obstructions, as if there was no one there. He passed through 4 formations and easily took away the reward that the Manchu had given to the first place in this area. This was also the first time in the history of the Ancient Heaven sect that an outer sect disciple had taken away first place in a test outside. This created an absolute record. The mysterious purple-robed youth had actually easily passed the Human King talent and 3 Human Hero talent that the Ancient Heaven sect had nurtured for so many years. This is impossible. Elder Husankuin's eyes were wide open, and he found it hard to come back to his senses. In this test, from the beginning to the end, he was certain that his new disciple would be the first in this test. However, he did not expect that a mysterious purple-robed young man would appear out of nowhere and easily take the first place with a crushing force, taking away the reward from the sect. Where did that brat come from? Where did that brat come from? The clouds on the mountain peak drifted. Then, over a dozen people lowered their heads and looked at each other. Their gazes met, and the same ripple appeared in their eyes. Even Husankuin, Yanmingza, and the other elders seemed to have thought of something at the same time. Whoosh, whoosh! Suddenly, almost at the same time, the space around the mountain trembled violently. More than a dozen auras fluctuated, and more than a dozen super experts soared into the sky, causing the surrounding space to distort. More than a dozen figures, rushed towards the testing main peak. The dozen super experts understood that the mysterious purple-robed young man was definitely not simple. With such shocking talent, if they could take him in, they would be able to bring glory to their sex in the future. This time, they would be able to show off in the Manchu. The more talented their sex were, the higher their status in the Manchu would be. Moreover, for the sake of the entire Ancient Heaven sect, they had to immediately take the purple-robed young man into the Manchu. All of you, stop right there. A faint and melodious voice was transmitted into the ears of the dozens of super experts who had just risen into the air, causing them to stop in midair. Swish, swish! Numerous gazes turned around and uniformly landed on the towering mountain peak behind them. Their faces changed in confusion as they faintly sensed that something was amiss. At this moment, Elder Qin Yang, who was sitting cross-legged on a rock on the mountain peak, stood up. His eyes no longer seemed to be closed. No expression could be seen on his ruddy old face, and there was no change in his expression. However, the more they looked at Elder Qin Yang's ruddy face, the more uneasy they felt. After so many years, everyone knew that as long as Elder Qin Yang's old face appeared to be serious, he was definitely plotting something in his heart. Elder Qin Yang, who was sitting cross-legged, slowly stood up from the rock. He tidied his clothes and looked at the dozens of super experts who had stopped in front of the mountain peak. He spoke in an indifferent voice. All of you stay here and watch the test. I will go and take a look around. No one is allowed to leave without permission. I am the person in charge of this test. If anyone dares to disobey me, don't blame me for enforcing the sect rules. Profound energy surged out from under Elder Qin Yang's feet after his voice sounded, after which his body flew in the direction of the main peak of the test in front of the dozens of frozen faces. In a couple of flashes, he was already far away. The dozens of super experts looked at each other in a daze. Their frozen faces seemed to be holding something back, and it seemed as though they were about to be injured from holding it in. This is going to be troublesome. It is definitely going to be troublesome. A beautiful woman who appeared to be in her 40s said. Her expression was quite grave. Elder Qin Yang is definitely thinking of ruining good seedlings again. Elder Yan Mingzi said. His expression froze as he looked at Elder Qin Yang's departing back. There was helplessness in his eyes. Outside the mountain range, beside the forbidden space, the Golden Condor King, the Solitary Sword King, and several other kings in the distance looked at the mountain range in front of them. Their eyes were filled with reluctance, but they did not dare to take even half a step forward. They could only watch as the purple-robed youth, who had been chasing for several days and nights, disappeared from their sight. Bastard! The Golden Condor King was the most aggrieved. He was so angry that his face and neck turned red. The purple-robed youth, who had been chasing for several days and nights, had actually disappeared before his eyes. He knew very well that if he had gritted his teeth and paid a price earlier, the purple-robed youth would not have been able to escape from him. He originally thought that a cooked duck would not be able to escape, but now he could only watch as a cooked duck flew away before his eyes. Let's go. There must be experts from the Ancient Heaven sect nearby. Let's leave first. The Solitary Sword King's face was filled with helplessness. His eyes were filled with reluctance. If he could obtain that extraordinary Tao artifact sword, it would be enough to increase his strength by a lot. He would probably be able to become a peak existence among those of the same level. However, he could only watch as the purple-robed youth left. They did not dare to enter the forbidden space of the Ancient Heaven sect. They probably would not be able to do so. If I can meet that brat again, I will not be polite from the start. The Golden Condor King was truly aggrieved. The golden rune wings on his back disappeared, and he left with the Solitary Sword King. Not far away, several kings looked at the mountain range in front of them. After that, they could only leave silently. Since the Golden Condor King and the Solitary Sword King had left, they did not dare to stay any longer. The Ancient Heaven sect was a colossus to them. With their cultivation and strength, they could be considered experts in the entire central continent. However, they knew that they were like ants in front of a colossus like the ancient heaven sect. Little you has to rush today, so I rush to write. There are only 2,000 words. I will publish it first, and I will probably reach home at night. I will update today. Brothers, don't wait too long. I apologize to everyone, and I will repay everyone tomorrow. Chapter 570. The mountains were connected, the peaks overlapped, and the lush green. Behind the huge mountain, Du Xiaofu picked up the Qinquan bag and immediately went down the mountain from the back of the mountain. Du Xiaofu didn't dare to stop as he was worried that the martial King Realm experts would chase after him. However, Du Xiaofu didn't continue to run far. He hid in a natural cave at the back of the mountain. After setting up a seal that didn't leave any traces, he hid inside. Du Xiaofu wasn't stupid. He had already run so far. He believed that the many monsters and glyphs in the special mountain range would be able to block the martial King Realm experts for a while, enough for him to escape. However, Du Xiaofu also knew that he couldn't run far in his current condition. This time he was truly exhausted. However, the most dangerous place was also the safest place. Even if the martial King Realm experts could escape quickly, Du Xiaofu felt that they would never think that he would be hiding in the closest place. Whoosh! After Du Xiaofu entered the natural cave, a figure quickly flew past above him. He didn't notice that Du Xiaofu had climbed over the mountain and was hiding in the cave. The air in the cave was dry, and there were jagged and thick rocks all around. Occasionally, there were a few patches of moss climbing on the edges of the rocks. After Du Xiaofu tidied up a smooth and flat area, he sat down cross-legged. His face was pale, and there were traces of light, golden blood at the corner of his mouth. My cultivation isn't enough. It's far from enough. His pale face didn't affect the resoluteness on his face. Du Xiaofu gritted his teeth, and his eyes glowed with a faint golden light. This time, in order to escape from the martial King Realm experts, Du Xiaofu realized that his strength wasn't enough. When he was in the Stone Dragon Empire and the Dark Forest, Du Xiaofu felt a little satisfied. He felt that although his cultivation wasn't an absolute expert, it was still not bad. He was also quite confident that he could roam the central province. But now he was being chased by a few martial King Realm experts, like a stray dog. Du Xiaoqing, Du Xiaoyao, and the little tiger's whereabouts were unknown. This made Du Xiaofu truly realize that with his current cultivation and strength, he was nothing. If it weren't for his good luck this time, the consequences could be imagined. Strength, I need strength. The golden light in Du Xiaofu's clear eyes fluctuated. It was sharp and terrifying. It took a long time before it disappeared. After that, Du Xiaofu took out the Qinquan bag on his body, but his expression was slightly gloomy. He wanted to find some elixirs for recovery, but he found that there were no elixirs in his Qinquan bag at this moment. Along the way, Du Xiaofu had used up a lot of valuable elixirs. He was only able to survive because of the special cultivation method of the golden winged rock. Sighing slightly, Du Xiaofu smiled bitterly. Then, a second Qinquan bag appeared in Du Xiaofu's hand. It was the one he had picked up from the top of the mountain not long ago. He didn't know who had left it there. I wonder if there are any elixirs or spiritual herbs in there. Raising his eyebrows, Du Xiaofu's eyes moved slightly. Holding a tentative attitude and some expectations, he began to use his spiritual power to probe the Qinquan bag. Then, Du Xiaofu's expression changed slightly. He was surprised to find that there were no seals or restrictions placed on the Qinquan bag. He could easily probe it. Inside the Qinquan bag, Du Xiaofu was surprised to find that there was an item wrapped in energy. Mysterious runes spread out. He immediately took out the item. Du Xiaofu's expression changed to surprise. A green fishing net appeared in his hand. Along with the appearance of this blue fishing net, waves of energy surged, and the mysterious runes on the talismans fluctuated, accompanied by a wave of pressure that suddenly spread out. Dao item, this is a Dao item. Du Xiaofu's gaze trembled at this moment. The aura pressure of this fishing net was definitely not inferior to the tyrannical shadow in his hands. As an all-round spiritual talisman master, he had also participated in the important refining of the tyrannical shadow. It was not difficult for Du Xiaofu to feel that this fishing net had already reached the level of a middle-grade Dao item. Its value was enough to make a martial Emperor realm cultivator unable to resist fighting for it. It's actually a middle-grade Dao item. Du Xiaofu's pale face was also very shocked at this time. Who would have thought that there would be such a treasure in the Qianquan bag that he had casually picked up? A treasure that was enough to make a martial Emperor realm expert fight to the death. But he had casually picked one up. The fishing net fluctuated with energy. Du Xiaofu immediately put it into the Qianquan bag, so that the energy fluctuations would not expose him. Then, an exquisite jade bottle the size of a fist appeared in Du Xiaofu's hand. There were only two things in the entire Qianquan bag. In addition to the middle-grade Taoist fishing net, there was also this jade bottle. The jade bottle was only the size of a fist. There was obviously a special sealing aura on the bottle cap to prevent the energy fluctuations from spreading out. Despite being separated by the jade bottle, Du Xiaofu was still able to sense the astonishing energy ripples within the jade bottle. This item is extraordinary, narrowing his eyes. Du Xiaofu's expression changed inwardly, and then he opened the jade bottle. Boom! In an instant, a dazzling light spread out, and a surging energy fluctuation spread out from the jade bottle, causing the entire cave to tremble invisibly. Du Xiaofu was also shocked at this moment. The jade bottle contained a kind of clear, spiritual medicine that was like jade. The light fluctuation was dazzling, like a talisman that was flashing. It was extremely strange, as if it was a living thing. That energy fluctuation caused everyone to feel astonished. Spiritual medicine liquid. This is the king-grade spiritual medicine liquid. Looking at the energy fluctuation in the jade bottle, Du Xiaofu's shocked eyes trembled. The energy fluctuation of the spiritual liquid was enough to reach the king grade. The king grade spiritual medicine liquid and a middle grade Dao item were all priceless, enough to be worth an empire. At this moment, there was such a precious treasure in the Qianquan bag that he had casually picked up. Du Xiaofu did not know who had dropped the Qianquan bag, but he knew that the king grade elixir liquid was a timely help to him. It had come at the right time. Gulp! Without much hesitation, Du Xiaofu was an all-round spirit symbol master, and it was not difficult for him to determine that this elixir liquid was extremely normal. Regardless of what this elixir liquid was used for, the energy contained within it was the perfect item to aid his recovery. Immediately, he lifted his head and directly poured the elixir liquid into his mouth, swallowing it in one gulp. Du Xiaofu would not dare to casually swallow the king-grade spiritual medicine liquid under normal circumstances. After all, the energy was too great, and he had to consider whether his physical body could withstand it. However, Du Xiaofu did not have much choice at this time. He could only recover as soon as possible, or he would not be able to get out of danger. The spiritual medicine liquid was cool and sweet when it entered his mouth. However, after the elixir liquid entered his body, Du Xiaofu's body immediately trembled violently. The energy spread out in an extremely short period of time, causing even his tough and powerful physical body to feel the pain caused by the swelling in his body. Walala, the energy of the spiritual medicine liquid immediately spread out in his body. Du Xiaofu could clearly feel that the enormous energy contained in the spiritual medicine liquid was drilling in and out of his body at this time. This energy was extremely pure, and it was released more and more violently, like a torrential flood, forcibly rushing through his body. After a short while, Du Xiaofu couldn't help but let out a miserable shriek from his mouth due to the overwhelming amount of energy. Boom! His body swelled, and the pure energy did not stop after Du Xiaofu's scream. Instead, it rushed even more fiercely. Humph! Forcefully enduring the pain, Du Xiaofu gritted his teeth and groaned. Ever since he started cultivating, Du Xiaofu had experienced this kind of pain more than once. It could even be said that it was a common occurrence. How many people could compare to the strength of his will? Refine! Du Xiaofu immediately steadied his mind, condensed his hand seals, and circulated the cultivation technique of the golden-winged rock clan. He directly refined the surging energy in his body, which wanted to explode his body for his own use, transforming it into pure, profound energy that circulated in his body, and then surged into the vast divine watchtower that had long since dried up. Time quietly passed like sand between one's fingers. 2 days later, the ancient sky sex test was completely over. At this time, a piece of news that attracted the attention of countless forces quietly spread, causing the 4 forces to be secretly shocked and quietly investigate. According to the news, a mysterious purple-robed youth quietly appeared in one of the ancient sky sex test areas. In an extremely short period of time, he broke through all the tests of the ancient sky sex outer sect disciples and quietly took first place. He took away the treasures rewarded by the ancient sky sect and then left. No one knew who the purple-robed youth was, but there were some descriptions. It was said that the mysterious purple-robed youth was young and carried a purple broadsword on his back. There was also a description that the mysterious purple-robed youth was close to 10 feet tall. He was strong and imposing, like the reincarnation of a demonic beast. All kinds of news spread, and for a time it was impossible to determine whether it was true or false. However, what was certain was that the first place in the ancient sky sex test area was taken by the purple-robed youth who appeared out of nowhere. The mysterious purple-robed youth suppressed a human king talent and 3 human talents of the ancient sky sect. It could be said that he had caused the ancient sky sect to lose a lot of face, and also caused the outer sect disciples of the ancient sky sect to lose a lot of face. It was said that this news quickly spread to the ancient sky sect, and even now it had alarmed the entire upper echelon of the ancient sky sect. I haven't updated much these few days, causing inconvenience. Xiao Yu sincerely apologizes. Tomorrow I will return to normal. In addition, I will work hard to repay my debts. Chapter 571. It was dusk. The sun was setting in the west, and the sunset covered the sky. In the depths of the mountain range, there were many extraordinary young men and women standing quietly. Under the setting sun, each of them cast a dark shadow, leaving mottled marks on the ground of the canyon. There were quite a number of these young men and women. There were probably close to 10,000 of them. Judging from their clothes and temperament, they were all extraordinary. Any one of them could be called an absolute genius in the outside world. However, these young men and women all looked pale. Their breathing was chaotic, and they seemed to be in a sorry state. These were the outer sect disciples that the ancient heaven sect had placed in this testing area. Any one of them was an extraordinary person of the same generation as them in the outside world. 1 valley, 2 churches, and all spiritual and martial arts. The 3 sects and 3 factions shook the central state. This was a phrase that everyone in the central state knew, and this phrase referred to the 9 great forces in the central state. The ancient heaven sect was one of the 3 sects and 3 factions. It was a colossus that shook the central state. It was said that the ancient heaven sect had been passed down for more than 10,000 years. To be able to become one of the 9 great forces in the central state was enough to show how powerful the ancient heaven sect was. Any disciple that walked out of the ancient heaven sect was never a simple person. They were all peak existences among their peers. At this moment, most of the young men and women, who were close to 10,000, were dejected. The 3 men and 1 woman at the front were like cranes in a flock of chickens. The nearly 10,000 extraordinary peers behind them were in awe of the 3 people. Among the 3 men and 1 woman, the one at the front was a young man in black. He looked to be about 22 or 23 years old. His appearance was very handsome, and his temperament was elegant. The young man in black's eyes were pure black. They were so black that they were like the endless abyss at the end of the universe. If one looked at them for a while longer, they would have the illusion that they were going to be sucked in. At this moment, the handsome young man's brows were slightly furrowed. The two men and one woman behind him had similar expressions. "Who is he?" After a moment, the handsome young man in black raised his head slightly. His black eyes were faintly glowing. He then looked in front of him and saw a dozen figures flying in the air. In the blink of an eye, the dozen or so figures silently landed in front of everyone. The instant before they landed, there were only a few young men and women who could sense the arrival of these dozen or so figures. Whoosh, whoosh, more than 10 figures descended. Their auras were restrained, and the wind and clouds were calm. Even the air did not fluctuate. These 10 people appeared to be middle-aged and above. Most of them were elderly. None of them had any aura fluctuations, but the invisible aura that spread out was enough to make people tremble. Any one of them would be a giant if they were in the outside world. Greetings, elders and protectors. When the nearly 10,000 young men and women saw these figures, they immediately bowed respectfully. Their gazes were filled with reverence, and they didn't dare show the slightest disrespect. These people were the ancient heaven sex elders, led by Husankuin, Chongmingze, and the other elders. Looking at the tens of thousands of outer sect disciples in front of them, many of the elders were originally extremely satisfied. The overall standard of this outer sect disciple assessment was much higher than in previous years, especially when a genius like Wang Sanjia appeared in one of the assessment areas. This was extremely rare in previous years. However, at that moment, the ancient heaven sex elders and others were unable to feel satisfied. The first place of the assessment had been easily taken away by someone else, and the ancient heaven sex disciples were unable to withstand a single blow from the mysterious purple-robed youth. This was undoubtedly somewhat embarrassing for the ancient heaven sect. Over the years, in every outer sect disciple assessment, when had there ever been an outsider who could look down on the ancient heaven sect's outer sect disciples like this? Dispense with the formalities. Elder Husankuin looked at the crowd and slightly waved his hand. Then he inwardly shook his head, and his gray-white beard moved slightly. His gaze swept over the black-robed youth at the front, and he didn't know what to say. The black-robed youth was his recently accepted disciple, Feng Xiangyu. He had already reached the martial king realm and was a human king genius. With regards to Feng Xiangyu's performance this time, Elder Husankuin didn't have much to nitpick about. In the future, this beloved disciple before him would definitely surpass him without too much of a problem. However, looking at his beloved disciple before him, Elder Husankuin felt somewhat suffocated for no reason. First place had been taken away by an outsider who had easily surpassed his beloved disciple. When he returned, how would the other elders who usually secretly competed with him attack him? He could already imagine that scene. In short, this time, Elder Husankuin felt very helpless. However, he knew that he absolutely couldn't blame his beloved disciple, Feng Xiangyu. In fact, he even felt aggrieved for his beloved disciple, who knew that at the last moment, the mysterious purple-robed youth would suddenly appear. Roar! After a while, many demonic beast mounts appeared in the depths of the mountain range. They flapped their wings and covered the sky. Some of the largest demonic beast mounts flapped their wings and hovered in the sky. They were close to 200 feet in size and could cover the sky and the sun. They could carry close to 100 people. Walala! One by one, the huge demonic beast mounts carried the ancient heaven sect's disciples away. The assessment in this area had already ended, but the mysterious purple-robed youth's whereabouts were still unknown. Boom! After the ancient heaven sect's people left, the mountain range distorted. Runes flickered, and it seemed to be covered by some kind of powerful restriction. Time passed, and in the blink of an eye, another 10 days had passed. Behind the huge mountain peak, in a cave that no one could detect, a purple-robed youth with a broadsword on his back was sitting cross-legged. A faint golden light spread around his body. At this moment, Du Xiaofu's originally pale face had long since recovered its ruddy complexion. The swelling pain in his body had also gradually disappeared. However, the amount of pure energy transformed from the elixir liquid was still enormous, causing Du Xiaofu's skin to swell painfully. Waves of energy had nowhere to go in his body and even scuttled under his skin. This caused Du Xiaofu's body to crawl all over like leeches, as if his body was filled with countless leeches. It was extremely shocking to see. However, at this moment, Du Xiaofu naturally didn't pay attention to these feelings. He was completely focused on refining the energy in his body. The pure energy transformed from the elixir liquid was extremely strange. Although it was refined by Du Xiaofu's golden winged rock cultivation method, it could be directly transformed into pure profound qi. However, there was still a lot of energy that was completely unrestrained by Du Xiaofu's control and directly rushed into Du Xiaofu's bones, muscles, meridians, and cells. In a daze, Du Xiaofu could feel the strange energy fusing with his bones, muscles, meridians, and cells, giving him an indescribable feeling. Even the spiritual soul force in his Naiwen palace received a lot of benefits. There was a strange energy invading his mind, permeating his Naiwen palace, and nourishing his spiritual soul. Within the Naiwen palace, in Du Xiaofu's mind, there was a dazzling ball of light. Talisman inscriptions flickered on it, as if space was fluctuating. The ball rotated like a small star, enveloping the talisman inscriptions, and an ancient and domineering aura spread out. The dazzling ball of light was condensed from Du Xiaofu's spiritual soul. After fusing with the desolate ancient space, Du Xiaofu could feel that although his spiritual soul force cultivation had greatly increased at the soul symbol master level, there were some signs of loosening in his Naiwen palace, which affected his foundation quite a bit. At this moment, under the nourishment of this strange energy, some of the loosened spiritual soul force gradually became more and more stable. Du Xiaofu's dried-up divine watchtower was already filled with pure profound qi. There was also an endless stream of pure profound qi that poured into the divine watchtower and was completely swallowed by the divine watchtower. As the profound qi in the divine watchtower became more and more abundant, the aura that spread out from Du Xiaofu's body also became more and more tyrannical. The strange spiritual medicine, liquid, continuously turned into pure energy and was refined by Du Xiaofu. The royal grade spiritual medicine, liquid, had a huge amount of energy. Waves of pure energy were refined by Du Xiaofu and turned into pure, profound qi. It continuously entered the divine watchtower, as if there was no end to it. After an unknown amount of time, the faint golden light around Du Xiaogong's body finally became more and more dazzling. Finally, at some point in time, the golden talisman inscriptions flashed, and a golden phantom of a 5-fingered mountain silently appeared behind Du Xiaofu, enveloping Du Xiaofu's body. On the mountain phantom, the golden talisman inscriptions changed, finally condensing into the phantom of a golden winged rock. Boom! At this moment, an aura erupted, causing the entire cave to tremble. The gravel and dust on the ground were all sent flying, directly rushing out of the cave and breaking through the seal that Du Xiaofu had set up. Bam! At the same time, a low and deep muffled sound came out from Du Xiaofu's divine watchtower. The aura broke through an invisible barrier and stepped into a new level. A shocking aura also spread out from the entrance of the cave and soared into the sky. Aho! At this moment, the roars of countless beasts came out from the mountain range. Tens of thousands of beasts went into hibernation, and ferocious birds crawled on the ground, not daring to move. Numerous ferocious eyes stared at the towering mountain peak, where the aura of a demonic beast sovereign was spreading out. Starting from today, Xiao Yu will continue to write diligently. Chapter 572. The aura slowly dissipated and disappeared. Inside the cave, the Five-Finger Mountain and the golden winged rock around Du Xiaofu disappeared. The faint golden halo around his body also faded, and everything started to calm down. Chi! After a long while, a mouthful of turbid air was spat out from his throat. Du Xiaofu opened his eyes, and 2 rays of golden light flickered out. Then they became clear and restrained. He felt that the ball of light condensed by his mind and soul in his Naiwan palace had already stabilized and solidified. The area of the spirit gate in his body had once again expanded. The profound qi was full, and it was filled with vigorous fluctuations. The fluctuations were much stronger than the nirvana realm of the martial Marquis realm. Complete martial Marquis realm. The corner of Du Xiaofu's mouth lifted into a smile. His resolute face revealed a smile. He did not expect to obtain such benefits this time. His strength had undoubtedly increased by a lot. He had directly risen from the nirvana realm of the martial Marquis realm to the complete martial Marquis realm. Boom! With a slight clench of his hand, Du Xiaofu's mind moved slightly. He immediately felt the profound energy within the divine gate within his body suddenly sweep out like a turbulent fluctuation, causing the surrounding space to violently tremble. This feeling of power was much more tyrannical than before he had broken through. The profound qi calmed down. Du Xiaofu felt that the energy formed by the spiritual medicine liquid in his body had unknowingly been completely refined and disappeared. The injuries on his body had already recovered. However, Du Xiaofu also felt that at this moment, under the nourishment of the spiritual medicine liquid, his entire body had an indescribable feeling. This feeling could only be felt, but not described. However, although Du Xiaofu could not describe this feeling, he could feel that it should be quite beneficial to him. With a flip of Du Xiaofu's hand, a mid-grade Dao tool that resembled a fishing net appeared in his palm. Walala! The energy on the fish net fluctuated, and its aura was ancient. It was not much weaker than the tyrant shadow. It was not difficult for Du Xiaofu to feel that this middle-grade Dao treasure was an ownerless item. It had not been recognized by anyone. As long as he placed a soul imprint on it, he could directly control this middle-grade Dao treasure. This was the world of cultivators. Du Xiaofu was not a person who would return the things he found. And especially in this situation, Du Xiaofu, why would Du Xiaofu be courteous? Du Xiaofu, it doesn't seem right not to take advantage of the benefits. Du Xiaofu smiled and formed a soul imprint on the fishnet. How could Du Xiaofu, and by Du Xiaofu, how could Du Xiaofu walala? As Du Xiaofu's soul imprint was injected into the fishing net Dao artifact, the fishing net immediately rippled with astonishing energy fluctuations. Then it transformed into talisman runes that directly enveloped Du Xiaofu. Mountain ranges, forests, and mountain peaks overlapped one another. In mid-air, an old man who looked to be in his 70s was looking around. His white hair fluttered in the wind. His white beard swayed slightly, and he carried an ancient sword on his back. His eyes were looking around. His temperament was otherworldly, and he looked like a legendary super expert. How could he have disappeared? I've searched the entire mountain range. How could he have disappeared? Where the hell did that kid run off to? The old man's eyes were filled with doubt. His pale, white eyebrows twitched, and his figure disappeared into the sky above the mountain range. At night, the sky was inky blue and the sky was blue. At a glance, there were sparse forests and a faint moon, and the mountain range was solemn. In the cave, Du Xiaofu opened his eyes in the dark night. A faint golden light flickered in his eyes, which then turned into a clear and deep look. Heavenly net! Du Xiaofu murmured softly, a smile appearing on his face. The fishing net with the soul imprint was a middle-grade Dao tool. From it, he learned that this middle-grade Dao tool was called Heavenly Net. It was an extraordinary middle-grade Dao tool, and it had many extraordinary functions, which made Du Xiaofu extremely satisfied. I'm afraid it's not good to stay here for long. After a while, Du Xiaofu stood up, looking serious. Although he should have gotten rid of those martial king realm cultivators, the whereabouts of Du Xiaoqing, Du Xiaoyao, and the little tiger were still unknown. He had to find a way to find the source of the strange change in the central province's long river. This was not a place to stay for long. Judging from those extraordinary young men and women, the forces behind them were not simple, so it was not good to stay here for long. Chi! In the dark night, under the dim moonlight, a figure flew out of the cave and disappeared into the distance in a few flashes. 3 days later, in the early morning, misty mountains protruded out. Under the slightly white sky, the mountains were as dark as iron. As the red sun rose, mist rose, and milky white gauze separated the mountains, making it look like a dream. Between the mountains, on a steep road, a purple-robed youth slowly walked with his head slightly lowered. On his back was a wide purple sword. The purple-robed youth was Du Xiaofu, who had been walking through the mountain range for 3 days. In these 3 days, he did not know where he had gone. The mountain range was boundless, and he did not know where there were cities. In these 3 days, Du Xiaofu had obtained some spiritual herbs in the mountain range. However, he had not met a single beast lord, realm demonic beast, when he wanted to ask about the situation. Hence, Du Xiaofu purposely walked slowly and retracted his aura. This was to prevent the golden-winged Great Peng aura from leaking out and causing those beast lord, realm demonic beasts to sense it and flee. Du Xiaofu wanted to lure a beast lord, realm demonic beast to ask about the surrounding situation and where exactly this place was. This was to prevent him from getting lost and randomly wandering around. However, when he wanted to lure a demonic beast, Du Xiaofu discovered that let alone a beast lord, realm demonic beast, he had not even met a single low-tier demonic beast. Roar! Suddenly a beast roar was heard. Du Xiaofu's gaze slightly lifted to the front and saw a huge demonic python dashing out from the road ahead. Hiss, hiss! This demonic python's aura was scarlet red, and its tongue flickered in and out. Its eyes were cold, and its entire body was icy cold. Everywhere it passed, the rocky ground on both sides of the steep road was covered in a thick layer of frost, causing the temperature of the entire area to rapidly drop. Roar! Behind the huge demonic python, a huge and vigorous leopard dashed out. Its aura was vigorous and formidable, and it was not much weaker than the demonic python. Evil creature, where do you think you are going? At the same time, a young man's shout was heard from the back of the huge leopard. Soon after, a figure dashed out from the huge leopard, and with a wave of his hand, a sword aura was directly hacked out like lightning. Chi, 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 chi! As the sword aura swept out, wind and clouds immediately surged in this part of the sky. The golden aura was just like thunder, and with a thunderous momentum, it suddenly landed on the demonic python's huge tail. Wherever the sword aura passed, the ground cracked, and a mighty aura unfurled. The demonic python's huge tail was directly chopped off by the sword, and fresh blood spurted out. Hiss, hiss! The demonic python howled in agony. Its eyes were bloodshot, and its gigantic head was like a flood dragon. It opened its gigantic mouth and flicked its tongue in and out. A stream of icy cold air gushed out, freezing the space around it. It wanted to envelop the attacker and freeze him inside. Evil creature, prepare to die! The young man's shout rang out once again, and the figure directly appeared in front of the demonic python. The figure was actually not afraid of the demonic python's cold chi, and the light of the symbols wrapped around his body blocked the cold chi. Soon after, a sword aura was like lightning, and with a loud bang, it landed on the demonic python's malevolent head. Chi, 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 chi! The sword aura swept in, and the sword hilt directly pierced into the demonic python's head. Hiss, hiss! The huge demonic python roared, and finally its huge body powerlessly struggled for a few moments, before it directly fell on the main road, and its huge body seemed to have blocked the entire main road. A 17 or 18-year-old youth appeared beside the demonic python's corpse. His body was covered in a light blue robe, and although his clothes were not luxurious, they were extremely fitting and could not hide the heroic spirit between his brows. Although his handsome appearance revealed a little childishness that had not completely faded, his resolute expression was very outstanding. Roar! The demonic leopard walked behind the youth, and with a respectful expression, its huge body slowly shrunk. The youth waved his hand and sucked out the sword from the demonic python's head. The sword was not stained with blood, and the symbols on it flickered, and its aura was extraordinary. Chi! The sword aura forcefully slashed at the demonic python 7 inches, and the youth cut open the demonic python's skin, which could be used to refine a spiritual weapon. He took out a few jade bottles and filled them with the demonic python's blood. Finally, the demonic leopard tore open the demonic python's abdomen with its claws, and took out an item that looked like a snake's gallbladder and handed it to the youth. Du Xiaofu was not far away, quietly watching everything that was happening in front of him. The demonic python was at the peak of the perfect pulse spirit stage, and the demonic leopard was also at the perfect pulse spirit stage. The extraordinary youth's cultivation was at the initial martial lord stage, and he was only 17 or 18 years old. This was already very extraordinary. After the youth finished everything, he put away the items on his body, as if he had already sensed Du Xiaofu's presence. Only then did he look at Du Xiaofu. Behind the youth, the demonic leopard's eyes were fixed on Du Xiaofu. Although it could not sense any aura from Du Xiaofu's body, for some reason, the more it looked at the purple-robed youth, the more its eyes trembled. Looking at the youth who seemed to be about the same age as it, the youth's face did not seem to have any reaction. It thought that Du Xiaofu was scared out of his wits, and said, "My father is injured and needs the essence blood of the ice python to heal. I originally wanted to ask for some blood from the ice python and ask someone to refine it for me, who knew that the ice python would not agree, so I killed it. Why are you here alone? This is not a good place." Hearing this, Du Xiaofu smiled faintly at the extraordinary youth and said, "I'm lost. I don't know where this is, so I'm here." "I see." The extraordinary youth looked at Du Xiaofu, who seemed to be about the same age as him, and said, "My name is Huangfu Qi. Since you're lost, why don't you follow me back to Bailing City? Not far from this mountain range is the capital of the Bailing Empire, Bailing City." Chapter 573. Thank you. My name is Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu didn't refuse. It was great that this young man was willing to bring him along. Roar! Moments later, Du Xiaofu rode on Huangfu Qi's mount and left with him. "Brother Du, where did you come from? How did you get lost here?" Huangfu Qi was curious about Du Xiaofu on the back of the demonic leopard. He sensed Du Xiaofu's aura and felt an indescribable feeling. "I came here to train myself. I didn't expect to get lost," Du Xiaofu replied. Du Xiaofu's words weren't fake. Huangfu Qi didn't doubt him. They were about the same age and became familiar with each other after chatting for a while. Du Xiaofu found out from Huangfu Qi that he was indeed in the middle state. However, the middle state was huge, and he didn't know how big it was. This was the middle state, but it was still at the edge. There were tens of thousands of countries in the middle state. After comparing them, Du Xiaofu felt that the strength of an empire in the middle state was much stronger than the Stone Dragon Empire and other empires. Du Xiaofu found out from Huangfu Qi that an empire in the middle state usually had dozens of king-level experts and 6-star talisman masters. If it was an extremely powerful empire, there might be hundreds of king-level experts and 6-star talisman masters. There would be occasional conflicts between countries. The solution was also related to strength. However, it was rare for a big commotion to occur. After all, the ones who truly controlled the middle state were the 9 major powers. They were above the imperial power and commanded tens of thousands of countries. Although there were many powerful forces in the middle state and they were extremely powerful, it was difficult for them to compete with the 9 major powers. However, those major powers had their own place in the middle state. Even the 9 major powers had to give them some face. Which 9 major powers are there in the middle state? Du Xiaofu asked curiously. Now that he was in the middle state, it was necessary for him to know about the 9 major powers in the middle state. Brother, Du isn't from the middle state? You don't even know about the 9 major powers? Huang Fuqi was a little puzzled. Any cultivator in the Central Plains would know about the 9 great forces. To be honest, I came from a remote place. This is my first time in the middle state, so I don't know much. Du Xiaofu smiled bitterly. In comparison, the Dark Forest and Stone City were definitely remote places. After hearing Du Xiaofu's words, Huang Fuqi didn't have any doubts. The 9 major powers, and the 3 sects and 3 clans and 3 schools of the Central Continent. The 3 sects and 3 clans and 3 schools, 2 spiritual martial and spiritual of the Central Region. The 3 sects and 3 schools and the 3 schools, martial, and martial Lingchuanzovs. 1 valley, 2 sects and 3 schools. Du Xiaofu raised his eyebrows. Huang Fuqi smiled at Du Xiaofu and said, "This sentence refers to the Spirit Sky Valley, the Immeasurable Sect, the Great Will Sect, the Ancient Heaven Sect, the Sky Snake Sect, the Mysterious Underworld Sect, the Shindu Gate, the Intelligent Sword Sect, and the Mysterious Talisman Sect. The 9 major powers are famous in the Middle State and have countless experts." Du Xiaofu memorized the names of the 9 great factions that Huang Fuqi mentioned in his heart. He seemed to have dealt with the Sky Serpent Sect, the Profound Xian Sect, and the Profound Talisman Sect before. After a while, Du Xiaofu's expression changed slightly. He asked Huang Fuqi, "How do the Divine Light Court, the 7-Star Hall, and the Dark Nether Sect compare to the 9 major powers?" Huang Fuqi looked at Du Xiaofu with some confusion. He seemed to find it strange that Du Xiaofu did not know about the 9 major powers, but knew about the Divine Light Court, the 7-Star Hall, and the Dark Nether Sect. He then said, "It seems that Junior Du knows a lot. Although the Divine Light Court is not comparable to the 9 major powers, it is said that it has the highest chance of catching up to the 9 major powers in the future. The 7-Star Hall is actually 7 major powers, but I don't know much about the 7-Star Hall, so I'm afraid I can't answer you." Huang Fuqi paused for a while and looked at Du Xiaofu. As for the Dark Nether Sect, it is not weak, but compared to the 9 major powers, it is not enough. Du Xiaofu nodded slightly when he heard this. He already had a rough idea in his heart. Unknowingly, the 2 young men had chatted for half a day. The mountain range gradually passed by, and their vision began to widen. A series of buildings appeared in front of them, and the air began to be filled with people. "Junior Du, the outer city area of the Biling City is in front of us. We should be able to enter the Biling City in an hour," Huang Fuqi introduced to Du Xiaofu. After chatting for a while, the 2 young men had unknowingly become closer to each other. Du Xiaofu smiled. He had a good impression of Huang Fuqi. From the chat, Du Xiaofu learned that Huang Fuqi's father was a king of the Biling Empire, and the Huangfu family was also a branch of the royal bloodline. The current emperor of the Biling Empire was Huang Fuqi's uncle. However, compared to the main bloodline of the Huangfu family, Huang Fuqi was much more distant. They were separated by several generations. After an hour, the outline of the vast and continuous city appeared. It was like a dragon circling in the sky, and there were many majestic buildings. "Junior Du, this is your first time in the Central Plains. Why don't you stay in the Biling City for a few days? Don't be shy." Huang Fuqi was extremely hospitable as he pulled Du Xiaofu into the Biling City. With his identity as the young prince of the Biling City, it was naturally easy for him to enter the city on the demonic leopard. The Biling City was vast, and the streets were crowded with people. It was noisy, and it was even more prosperous than the Dragon City of the Stone Dragon Empire. There were many auras fluctuating on the streets. Du Xiaofu's expression changed when he peeked at them. As expected of the Central Plains, there were as many experts as there were clouds. It was rare to see a pulse spirit stage cultivator in the Stone Dragon Empire, but they could be seen everywhere in the Bailing City. After passing through many bustling streets and looking down from the sky, Du Xiaofu began to have a rough understanding of the Bailing City's strength. Finally, the demonic leopard landed in front of a majestic building. In front of the gate, there was a plaque with the words Scarlet Flames Mansion. There was a small square in front of the gate, and there were many armored soldiers with sharp auras standing there. Greetings, young prince. Everyone bowed respectfully when they saw Huang Fuqi. Huang Fuqi jumped down from the demonic leopard and smiled at Du Xiaofu. Brother Du, we're here. Little Qi, where did you go? I couldn't find you anywhere. As Huang Fuqi's voice fell, a tall figure rushed out from the Scarlet Flames Mansion. When he finished speaking, the figure directly rushed to Huang Fuqi's side. Second uncle, I went to help father find the blood of the ice python. With the blood essence of the ice python, father's injuries can be healed quickly. Huang Fuqi said to the person who came, Child, why are you so disobedient? What if you encounter danger? Your father didn't ask you to come back to take risks, but to entrust you with a heavy responsibility. The person who came was tall and seemed to be in his 40s. His face was quite heroic. His gaze swept across Du Xiaofu, and there was a hint of doubt in his eyes, but he didn't ask too much. At this moment, it seemed like he had something more important to say. He said to Huang Fuqi, Hurry up and go to the palace. The palace has already sent people over this morning. Those lords have already arrived. Some of the young guests who accompanied them want to walk around today, so they asked all the younger generation of the Huangfu family to accompany them. You must perform well. This matter is very important not only for you, but also for the entire family. Have they already arrived? Huang Fuqi's gaze slightly moved, as if he wasn't too willing. However, he did not show it, after which he took out a few jade bottles from his Qingquan bag and handed them to the middle-aged man. He said, Second uncle, this is the blood of the ice python. Find an alchemy symbol master to refine it into blood essence for father to treat his injuries. I'll go to the palace to take a look. Hurry up and go. The middle-aged man raised his head to look at the sky and said to Huang Fuqi, I'm afraid that they have already gone to the Imperial Garden. Hurry up and go to the Imperial Garden. Okay. Huang Fuqi nodded his head, after which he looked at Du Xiaofu beside him and said, Junior Du, why don't you come with me? I'll bring you to the palace to take a look. Okay. Du Xiaofu nodded his head. Since he had nowhere else to go, it would be good to take a look at the Imperial Palace of the Bailing Empire. Roar! Just as the two of them landed, they once again mounted the demon, leopard, and left. Brother Du, when we go to the Imperial Garden later, we'll be meeting some important people. You should take a good look at them. However, don't speak carelessly. We don't know the nature of those people, but I'm afraid that we can't afford to offend them. On the demon leopard, Huang Fuqi said to Du Xiaofu, Okay. Du Xiaofu faintly smiled. Sigh. When Huang Fuqi heard this, he softly sighed and softly said, Those people come from different backgrounds, so their style is indeed different. However, I don't think that one must come from a super faction to become a powerful person. In this world, there are many powerful people who rely on their own experience and hard work to become famous in the Central Plains. They are not inferior to those who come from super factions. Du Xiaofu slightly raised his head and asked Huang Fuqi, Looks like you're quite emotional. Huang Fuqi bitterly smiled and said, Although my current sect is not weak, it can only be considered a second-rate sect in the entire Central Plains. However, I'm very happy in my sect. My master and the other elders in the sect love and care for me. However, my father and the members of my family hope that I can enter a super faction one day. At that time, my entire family will benefit. Huang Fuqi softly sighed. After pausing for a while, he helplessly said, I understand their wishes and I also understand them. However, I personally don't think that being in a super faction will be suitable for me. Perhaps I will be able to obtain more resources to nurture. However, if it's not suitable, I'm afraid that it will have the opposite effect. There are more chapters today. I want to repay my book friends, looking for fresh flowers, looking for recommendations. Thank you. Chapter 574. Huang Fuqi paused and looked at Du Xiaofu with a smile. He said softly, "Do you still remember the profound talisman sect that I told you about? The people we're going to meet in the Imperial Garden should be the younger generation of the profound talisman sect. I wonder how strong the younger generation of the profound talisman sect is." The younger generation of the profound talisman sect. Du Xiaofu immediately thought of a few familiar figures when he heard this. Biling Empire Imperial Palace. Looking from afar, it was dazzling, magnificent, and boundless. The golden red palace stretched far into the distance. It was much larger than the Stone Dragon Empire's Imperial Palace. However, the Biling Empire's Imperial Palace seemed to lack the ancient aura of the Stone Dragon Empire's Imperial Palace. Outside the Imperial Palace, the two of them dismounted from their demon leopard mounts. Although Huang Fuqi wasn't part of the imperial family, he was still a relative of the imperial family. In addition, the imperial palace sent someone to summon him. Hence, it wasn't difficult for him to bring Du Xiaofu into the imperial palace. Stepping into the imperial palace, a dense imperial palace dragon qi spread out. However, Du Xiaofu raised his eyebrows slightly. Logically speaking, the Biling Empire's area and population were much larger than the Stone Dragon Empire's. However, the Imperial Palace Dragon Qi was inferior to the Stone Dragon Empire's Imperial Palace. It lacked an ancient aura. Although it was the same Imperial Palace Dragon Qi, it was less pure. Inside the Imperial Palace, there was a sentry every 3 steps and a guard every 5 steps. There were many powerful auras. Du Xiaofu also looked around with interest. He didn't expect to have the opportunity to visit the Imperial Palace as soon as he arrived in the Biling Empire. Imperial Garden, Imperial Garden. When Huang Fuqi brought Du Xiaofu through layers of checkpoints and entered this place, he was also surprised and full of admiration. The Imperial Garden was filled with beautiful trees and exotic flowers. The mountains were continuous, and there was a clear stream that flowed from the depths of the flowers and trees to the crevices of the rocks. There were clear ponds connected to each other, and the pond was filled with fish and lotus flowers. The small path in the garden was wide, and there were pavilions on both sides of the path. They were all hidden between the hills and trees. The scenery was breathtaking. "I think we're already late." Huang Fuqi's voice drew Du Xiaofu's attention back. Following Huang Fuqi's gaze, Du Xiaofu looked ahead and saw dozens of people slowly walking over. They were all young men and women. The group of dozens of people, the men were extraordinarily handsome, and the women were beautiful and noble. None of them were ordinary people. Du Xiaofu's gaze immediately landed on the purple-blue youth at the front. The young man looked to be around 18 or 19 years old. His entire body had a rather sharp aura. His appearance could not be said to be particularly handsome, but it made one feel extremely comfortable looking at him. Just as Du Xiaofu was sizing them up, the group of people walked over. "Big Brother Qi, you're here too?" A young girl hurriedly walked out from the group and immediately ran in front of Huang Fuqi. She looked to be around 16 or 17 years old. Her skin was as white as snow, and her eyes were deep and bright under her straight eyebrows. Her nose was straight, and the curve of her tender lips was exceptionally gentle and beautiful. It was so tender that one would want to take a bite out of them. Her jet black hair fell all the way to her perky waist. Looking at the young girl, Huang Fuqi immediately smiled faintly and said, "Little sister Huayu, have you all finished strolling around?" "Of course we finished. Little sister Huayu is not for you to call her that. You're only from a branch clan. Although you have some talent, Huayu is from the main clan. She's from the orthodox royal family. You should respectfully call her princess." Before Huang Fuqi finished speaking, a well-dressed young man immediately took half a step forward and scolded Huang Fuqi. Hearing the well-dressed young man's words, Huang Fuqi's eyes slightly raised. His expression was slightly gloomy as he looked at an artificial pool nearby and said, "Huang Fuji, don't go too far. Do you still remember that pool? 3 years ago I threw you into it. That's where you knelt and begged for mercy." As Huang Fuqi's voice fell, many young men and women in the surroundings secretly smiled, but they didn't dare to make a sound. Huang Fuji was a prince, and his status was above many people. Although his talent wasn't weak, it couldn't be compared to Huang Fuqi. All these years, only Huang Fuqi dared to touch Huang Fuji. Therefore, Huang Fuji had always held a grudge against Huang Fuqi. However, Huang Fuqi was deeply cared for by the emperor. Even when Huang Fuji was thrown into the pool by Huang Fuqi 3 years ago, the emperor reprimanded Huang Fuji after understanding the situation and didn't blame Huang Fuqi at all. "Huang Fuqi, you're courting death." Everyone secretly wanted to laugh, but at this moment, Huang Fuji was already furious. He shouted angrily, and his profound qi fluctuated. The veins on his palms bulged as if he was about to attack. However, Huang Fuji seemed to have some scruples at this moment. 3 years ago, he wasn't Huang Fuqi's opponent. 3 years later, he had made great progress. However, during these 3 years, Huang Fuqi had also been cultivating in the sect. He didn't know what level Huang Fuqi's cultivation had reached. "Second brother, there's a distinguished guest here today. Don't mess around. Why aren't you backing off?" A young man in a brocade robe with an extraordinary temperament blocked Huang Fuji's path. He seemed to be 2 or 3 years older than Huang Fuji. The young man was called Huang Fuyuan. He was Huang Fuji's brother and the Bailing Empire's first prince. Huang Fuyuan didn't mind the dispute between Huang Fuji and Huang Fuqi. Instead, he was happy to see it. The more Huang Fuji caused trouble, the more beneficial it would be for him. In the future, Huang Fuji wouldn't be a threat to his ascension to the throne. However, the person they were going to accompany today was a distinguished guest from the profound talisman sect. If he could properly entertain the guest, he would be able to establish a relationship with the guest in the future. In the future, not to mention the throne, even greater benefits would be possible. Although the Bailing Empire was a country, it was only one of the dozens of empires controlled by the profound talisman sect. Even the imperial family had to look up to the profound talisman sect. A single word from the profound talisman sect was enough to easily change the ruler of an empire. Therefore, at this moment, Huang Fuyuan didn't want his second brother, Huang Fuji, to ruin this matter. After berating Huang Fuji, his gaze landed on Huang Fuqi. His expression was rather indifferent. Huang Fuyuan naturally knew that Huang Fuqi and Huang Fuji didn't get along since they were young. Although he was worried that Huang Fuji would threaten his position, no matter what, Huang Fuji was still his second brother. Compared to an outsider, he naturally had to stand together with the outsider. He said, "Huang Fuqi, there's a distinguished guest here today. Father told you to come early, yet you've only arrived now. Do you not place the emperor in your eyes, or do you not place the profound talisman sect in your eyes?" Huang Fuqi's eyes immediately lifted when he heard this. His gaze turned a little sluggish. He had always known that Huang Fuyuan was an insidious person. At this moment, Huang Fuqi finally witnessed Huang Fuyuan's insidiousness. No matter how he answered, he would likely offend one party. Of course, he naturally couldn't answer such a question. "Big brother, Brother Qi didn't mean that. He must have been delayed by something. That's why he's only here now." The young lady called Huai Yu immediately helped Huang Fuqi out of the situation when she saw this. "What do you know? Hurry up and leave." Huang Fuyuan glared at the young lady. Seeing Huang Fuqi's sluggish expression, he knew that he had achieved his goal. A cold smile flashed across his eyes without leaving a trace. After which, he respectfully and ambiguously said to the blue-purple robed young man beside him, "Sergwa, let's go. I've arranged quite a few programs for Sir Gua tonight. I believe that Sir Gua will definitely like them." The blue-purple robed young man's gaze seemed to have been fixed on Du Xiaofu the entire time. Only when he heard this did he turn his gaze away. A smile appeared in his eyes as he patted Huang Fuqi's shoulder and said, "Your arrangements are good. However, I still have something to do tonight, so I'm afraid I won't be able to go." The young man's words immediately caused joy to appear on Huang Fuyuan's face. His heart was wild with joy. He hurriedly nodded and respectfully said, "That's fine. If Sir Gua needs some programs, I can send them to Sir Gua's room." The blue-purple robed young man shook his head. He seemed to know what Huang Fuyuan was implying and said, "There's no need for that." Huang Fuqi looked at Huang Fuyuan, Huang Fuji, and the others. He nodded and smiled at the young lady called Huaiyu and said to Du Xiaofu, "Brother Du, let's go." "Hey, Huang Fuqi, how dare you bring an outsider into the Imperial Garden? Today, there are distinguished guests present. Only people from the Huangfu family can come. Do you think the Imperial Garden is your home? How dare you? It seems that the Imperial Garden is your backyard and you don't put the royal family in your eyes." As Huang Fuqi's voice fell, Huang Fuji, who had just been reprimanded by Huang Fuyuan, looked at Du Xiaofu. He was usually arrogant and would not pay attention to others. At this moment, when he saw Huang Fuqi bringing an unfamiliar young man into the Imperial Garden, he immediately felt as if he had grasped Huang Fuqi's weakness and was ready to take advantage of it. He must find a way to teach this Huang Fuqi a lesson. Huang Fuqi looked back at Huang Fuji and then glanced at the blue-purple robed young man. He ignored Huang Fuji and said to Du Xiaofu, "Brother Du, no need to pay attention to him. Let's go." Du Xiaofu smiled faintly and did not pay much attention to it. Huang Fuji became more and more furious when he saw that Huang Fuqi was about to turn around and leave, completely ignoring him. It was as if he had been slapped in the face. Huang Fuqi didn't put him in his eyes. He immediately shouted, "Huang Fuqi, how dare you? Do you still want to leave? Stay. What if I insist on leaving? Can you stop me?" No matter how good Huang Fuqi's temper was, he was still slightly angry. He looked back at Huang Fuji indifferently. "You, under the gaze of so many people, especially in the presence of the distinguished guests of the profound talisman sect." Huang Fuji did not put him in his eyes. Huang Fuji could no longer keep his face, although he was a little afraid of Huang Fuqi. 3 years had passed and he had some confidence in himself. He said angrily, "Huang Fuqi, you don't put the royal family in your eyes. If you dare to leave today, don't blame me for being impolite." Chapter 575. Huang Fuji! Huang Fuqi raised his gaze and his expression darkened. However, just as he was about to speak, a figure appeared in front of him. The figure stepped forward with a broad sword wrapped in purple cloth on his back. There was a faint smile on his face as he interrupted Huang Fuqi's words. He looked at Huang Fuji and said, "You're wrong. Brother Huang Fuqi is also a member of the Huangfu clan and can be considered as a member of the imperial family. If you don't respect the imperial family, you don't respect yourself. You're really trying to pin a crime on someone who doesn't respect himself." The person who spoke was naturally Du Xiaofu. He had a good impression of Huang Fuqi. Seeing the two brothers, Huang Fuji and Huang Fuyuan, one was insatiable while the other was sinister. Du Xiaofu didn't want to cause too much trouble for Huang Fuqi because of him. After all, this was the Biling Empire. If this matter was blown up, it would be disadvantageous for Huang Fuqi. That was why he stepped forward to speak. As Du Xiaofu stepped forward, Huang Fuji was wary of Huang Fuqi. However, he wasn't wary of Du Xiaofu at all. His expression instantly turned cold, and he shifted his anger towards Huang Fuqi to Du Xiaofu. He roared, "Who do you think you are? You're asking for death." As soon as he finished speaking, Huang Fuji's feet suddenly landed on the ground. The profound qi beneath his feet surged, and the aura of a martial marquis exploded. under the shocked gazes of the surrounding people. His figure turned into an afterimage and shot towards Du Xiaofu like a ghost. As Huangfu Ji made his move, Huangfu Yuan's gaze was indifferent. He had no intention of stopping him. At that moment, a faint ripple appeared in the eyes of the blue-purple-robed youth. Huangfu Qi's expression changed drastically, and he immediately wanted to stop him. He wasn't afraid of Huangfu Ji, but he knew that Huangfu Ji wasn't weak either. In his heart, Du Xiaofu came from a remote place. How could he stop Huangfu Ji? Qi, however, just as Huangfu Qi was about to make a move, he discovered that an invisible aura rippled from Du Xiaofu's body, directly binding him and making him unable to move. At this moment, his expression changed drastically once again. "You're courting death." In a short instant, Huangfu Ji's figure appeared in front of Du Xiaofu. The gloomy coldness in his eyes grew even more intense as vigorous, profound energy surged within his body. Clenching his hand into a fist, he directly threw a punch that was wrapped in surging profound energy and covered in flickering runes, directly smashing towards Du Xiaofu. At this moment, many of the surrounding gazes could not bear to look at him. As a prince of the Bailing Empire, killing a person in the Imperial Garden was as casual as stepping on an ant. In terms of strength, although Huangfu Ji had always been inferior to Huangfu Qi was publicly acknowledged as the peak of the younger generation in the entire empire. Although Huangfu Ji was slightly weaker, he was definitely one of the peak existences among his peers in the entire Bailing Empire. At this moment, to the dozens of accompanying young men and women, no one would think that the purple-robed young man who stood out would be able to resist Prince Huangfu Ji at this moment. Narrowing his clear eyes, Du Xiaofu helplessly smiled in his eyes as he looked at the figure in luxurious clothes that was rushing towards him like a ghost. Sigh. At the same time, Du Xiaofu let out a soft sigh, slightly waving his hand. His hand was wrapped in a faint golden light. Under the dazzling gazes of the crowd, it directly landed on Huangfu Ji's fist with lightning speed. Crack, crack! As Du Xiaofu's hand landed, the sound of bones breaking was immediately heard, following which a miserable shriek was heard from Huangfu Ji's mouth as he spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. At the same time, a heart-wrenching cry was heard. Ah! After the miserable shriek, the formation wave dissipated. Under the shocked gazes of the surrounding crowd, they saw Huangfu Ji's body fly out like a kite with broken wings and violently crash onto the ground. The crowd watched as the back of Huangfu Ji's hand, which had just punched out, was dripping with blood. His arm was swollen and his body was curled up in pain. His mouth was stained with blood. At this moment, everyone's eyes were filled with astonishment as they became flabbergasted, including Huangfu Qi and Huangfu Yuan. Huangfu Ji's cultivation was at the initial stage of the martial marquis level. To be able to so casually injure Huangfu Ji in such a manner, just how terrifying was his strength? Huff, huff! Moments later, some people gasped. It was as if no one had expected that the purple-robed young man was not only so powerful, but also dared to mercilessly injure Prince Huangfu Ji in the Imperial Garden of the Bailing Empire's Imperial Palace. What powerful strength! I'm afraid that he did not even use 1/10 of his strength. Huangfu Qi stared at Du Xiaofu in shock. He could feel that Du Xiaofu's attack was casual. He did not even use much strength. Where did this brat come from? He's dead for sure. How dare he injure a prince in the Imperial Palace? He's courting death. This brat's brain must be damaged. He actually dares to injure Prince Huangfu Ji. After a short period of shock, the crowd sighed and shook their heads as they whispered to each other. Everyone knew that if Huangfu Qi had attacked, it would be fine. The emperor had always valued Huangfu Qi. In addition, Huangfu Qi also had the surname Huangfu. Even if he had seriously injured Huangfu Ji, as long as he was not in the wrong, the most severe punishment would be a final punishment. However, now that the unfamiliar purple-robed young man had attacked, the outcome was different. Forget about Huangfu Qi Even the entire Scarlet Flame Mansion would not be able to protect him. Brat, how dare you? No matter who you are, you will pay the price for being so presumptuous in the imperial palace of my biling empire. After Huangfu Yuan recovered from his shock, his face immediately turned gloomy and furious. An unfamiliar purple-robed young man had seriously injured a prince in the imperial garden. Putting aside the fact that Huangfu Ji was his second brother, this also concerned the imperial family's reputation and dignity, especially when the profound talisman sect's distinguished guests were present. This was equivalent to slapping the imperial family in the face in front of the profound talisman sect's distinguished guests. It was also a slap to Huangfu Yuan's face. What do you want? What kind of price do you want me to pay? Du Xiaofu raised his eyebrows as he looked at Huangfu Yuan with displeasure. This Huangfu Yuan was sinister and sinister. It was better to stay away from this kind of person. Otherwise, it would only be a matter of time before he caused endless trouble. You dare to touch a prince of the imperial family of my biling empire? You! Huangfu Yuan was gloomy and furious as he coldly said. However, before he could finish speaking, the purple-robed young man suddenly lifted his head and interrupted him. Shut up! Huangfu Yuan immediately looked at the purple-robed young man when he heard this. His eyes revealed a flattering smile as he respectfully said, Sir Gua, let me handle such a small matter. Please don't take it to heart. A brat who came from nowhere will not be able to create any waves at the gates of my biling empire's imperial palace. Huangfu Yuan's words had yet to fade when the purple-robed young man glanced at Huangfu Yuan. His expression was cold as he cried out in a deep voice, I am asking you to shut up! The purple-robed young man did not give Huangfu Yuan any face. His deep cry shook the surrounding young men and women. Their expressions changed as they discussed in a low voice. Huangfu Yuan was so shocked that his mind trembled, after which his face turned deathly pale. For a moment he did not dare to speak. He did not know what had happened. Why did Sir Gua of the profound talisman sect suddenly lose his temper at him? After his words sounded, the purple-robed young man walked towards Du Xiaofu. Under the shocked gazes from all around, Sir Gua of the profound talisman sect's sunken face gradually revealed a smile. He stood in front of the purple-robed young man and actually opened his arms to give him a bear hug. The smile on his face was as though he had won a prize. He was excited and happy as he emotionally said, Brother Xiaofu, I thought that I had misjudged you. I did not expect that it was really you. Why have you come to the biling empire? I have also just arrived. I did not expect you to be here. Du Xiaofu smiled faintly, after which he opened his arms and was tightly hugged by the purple-robed young man. Huangfu Qi, who had been thinking about how to help Du Xiaofu escape, was stunned as he watched the scene unfold in front of him. At this moment, the dozens of extraordinary young men and women in the surroundings all widened their eyes. Their pupils contracted as they gasped at the scene in front of them. Sir Gua of the profound talisman sect was actually familiar with the purple-robed young man. From the looks of it, it was not as simple as just being familiar with each other. It was obvious that their relationship was not ordinary. At this moment, Huangfu Yuan and Huangfu Ji, who was lying on the ground in the distance and had just been helped up by someone, had an even more shocked expression on their faces. After which, Huangfu Yuan and Huangfu Ji seemed to have thought of something at the same time. Their faces turned deathly pale. The purple-robed young man hugged Du Xiaofu tightly and patted his shoulder a few times before letting go. He looked at the familiar face in front of him and said excitedly, Brother Xiaofu, it is really great to be able to see you. If senior sister Zhu Shui knows that you have come to the central region, she will definitely be very happy. The purple-robed young man was Gua Ming of the profound talisman sect. Back then, the three of them had risked their lives and trained for a long time in the savage beast mountain range with Du Xiaofu and Zhu Shui. Du Xiaofu had even saved their lives. This kind of relationship was definitely not something that ordinary relationships could easily compare to. Zhu Shui Du Xiaofu smiled as the image of a woman with a slender figure and bright eyes appeared in his mind. He then asked Guoming, "Is she doing well? Has she also come to the Bailing Empire?" Not long after she returned, she awakened some mysterious martial veins in her body. She is now an influential figure in the profound talisman sect. She is many times stronger than me. However, senior sister Zhu Shui often thinks about you. When I came out this time, she specifically asked me to inquire about you. She said that one day you will definitely come to the central continent. It seems that senior sister Zhu Shui really knows you well. Thank you, Commander Schleijin, for your generosity. Chapter 576. Du Xiaofu smiled when he heard this. It seemed like Zhu Shui had encountered many opportunities after returning to the mysterious talisman sect. He was happy for her. Du Xiaofu's eyes moved slightly. He looked at Guoming and smiled. "I once met someone with the same name as you. How have you been these years?" Guoming smiled and said, "I'm still the same. Thanks to senior sister Zhu Shui's help, I barely managed to become an inner disciple. This is not a good place to talk. Where are you staying now? I'll go back and greet the elders in the sect. I'll look for you later." Before Du Xiaofu could reply, Huang Fuqi took half a step forward and said to Guoming, "Brother, Du has just arrived at the Bailing Empire. He's staying at the Scarlet Flame Mansion." Guoming nodded when he heard Huang Fuqi's words. He smiled at Du Xiaofu and said, "I'll look for you at the Scarlet Flame Mansion tomorrow." This was not a good place to talk. Du Xiaofu nodded and left with Huang Fuqi. Huang Fuyuan and the heavily injured Huang Fuji watched Du Xiaofu and Huang Fuqi leave from afar. Their faces were deathly pale, and they did not dare to stop them. They clearly saw that Lord Guo of the mysterious talisman sect was extremely friendly with the purple-robed youth. From their conversation, they found out that the purple-robed youth had a close relationship with an influential figure in the mysterious talisman sect. Regardless of the purple-robed youth's background, the fact that he had a relationship with Lord Guo and that influential figure in the mysterious talisman sect was not something that the entire Bailing Empire could afford to offend. "Brother Du, I didn't expect you to know someone from the mysterious talisman sect." After leaving the Imperial Garden and the Imperial Palace, Huang Fuqi, who had not spoken much along the way, finally could not help but ask Du Xiaofu. At this moment, Huang Fuqi could not help but wonder how a person from a remote place could know a disciple from a colossus like the mysterious talisman sect. "We've known each other for a long time, and we haven't seen each other for a long time." Du Xiaofu also did not expect to see Guoming in the Bailing Empire. He thought back to the time when they were adventuring together in the savage Beast Mountain Range. Time was like flowing sand, and in the blink of an eye a few years had passed. When the two of them returned to the Flaming Duke's mansion, it was already dusk. Under Huang Fuqi's arrangement, Du Xiaofu settled down in a separate courtyard in the Flaming Duke's mansion. The courtyard was quiet, with its back against the rockery and surrounded by water on three sides, exuding a sense of elegance. At night, Du Xiaofu stood in front of the window in his room. The moonlight shone through the window. Du Xiaofu stood there quietly for a while. Then he took out a small pagoda and murmured, "Brother Qing Chen, when are you going to wake up?" After murmuring those words, Du Xiaofu's expression turned serious. He could not help but worry about Du Xiaoqing, Du Xiaoyao and the little tiger. Right now he seemed to be powerless. He did not even know where to start looking for them. Then, just as Du Xiaofu was about to rest, Huang Fuqi brought many elders of the Flaming Duke's mansion with an apologetic and helpless expression. In front of Du Xiaofu, the burly men and elders of the Flaming Duke's mansion were all extremely respectful and polite. After Huang Fuqi and Du Xiaofu introduced second Uncle Huang Fuxing and a few elders, they did not speak much. Huang Fuqi was also very helpless. After learning about what happened in the Imperial Garden, second uncle and the other elders immediately came to visit. They could not do it tomorrow. Therefore, Huang Fuqi had no choice but to accompany them. If it were not for his father's serious injuries, he would have come long ago. However, these elders were also very tactful. After visiting, they definitely invited Du Xiaofu to stay for a while longer. If there was anything he needed, he could ask. After that, they did not disturb Du Xiaofu. "I'm sorry, the elders and the family." After the elders left, before Huang Fuqi could finish a sentence, Du Xiaofu smiled and interrupted Huang Fuqi. He said, "It's okay, I understand. The elders are just a little more enthusiastic." Huang Fuqi smiled helplessly and said, "Have a good rest. If you need anything, don't hesitate to ask." After Huang Fuqi left, Du Xiaofu sat cross-legged on the bed. After a while, his body was enveloped in a circle of white light. His aura fluctuated, causing ripples in one's heart. The night passed. After dawn, the first ray of light pierced through the thin fog. The entire Bailing city welcomed morning. Du Xiaofu had just stopped his breathing when Huang Fuqi came over with a smile. He said, "The imperial family has sent someone to see you. It's the current emperor's younger brother. He also brought Huang Fuyuan and Huang Fuji. It seems like they are here to ask for forgiveness. Do you want to see them?" Huff! Du Xiaofu took a deep breath and stretched. He smiled at Huang Fuqi and said, "Bring me to see them." "Thank you." Brother Du, Huang Fuqi, smiled gratefully. Yesterday, when Du Xiaofu attacked Huang Fuji, he naturally knew that Du Xiaofu didn't want to cause trouble for him. Now, Du Xiaofu didn't need to give face to the imperial family. With the relationship between Du Xiaofu and the Profound Charm sect, the imperial family of the Bailing Empire didn't need to care too much. Right now, they were just giving face to him. They still didn't want to make things difficult for the Scarlet Flames Mansion. In the hall of the Scarlet Flames Mansion, after Du Xiaofu arrived, many figures immediately stood up to welcome him. Among them, there were many people from the Scarlet Flames Mansion that Du Xiaofu had seen last night. As for the others, Du Xiaofu glanced at them. It wasn't difficult to guess that they were from the imperial family. Huang Fuyuan and Huang Fuji were among them. Then, just as Huang Fuqi had expected, the imperial family brought Huang Fuji and Huang Fuyuan over to apologize. The two brothers, Huang Fuyuan and Huang Fuji, who were extremely arrogant yesterday, were well behaved when they saw Du Xiaofu today. It seemed that they had been reprimanded long ago. They apologized profusely and almost knelt down. Du Xiaofu didn't say much, nor did he take it to heart. Huang Fuji and Huang Fuyuan weren't strong enough to be his opponents. Then, when the imperial family and others were still apologizing, someone from the Scarlet Flames Mansion came in a hurry, saying that someone from the Profound Charm sect was here to see Du Xiaofu. Hearing this, the expressions of the imperial family and the imperial family changed. They all hurried out to welcome him. Du Xiaofu also followed out. The one who came from the Scarlet Flames Mansion was Guoming. He was wearing a blue and purple robe. His appearance was clean and made people feel comfortable looking at him. As soon as Guoming arrived, he was immediately surrounded by the Scarlet Flames Mansion and the imperial family. They were extremely respectful towards him. As an inner disciple of the Profound Charm sect, his status was not ordinary. After nodding slightly to the imperial family and the imperial family, Guoming said to the crowd, "I'm here to see Brother Xiaofu. Can you find us a quiet place?" "No problem, I'll arrange it right away." Huang Fuqi's second uncle, Huang Fuli, nodded. After a while, Huang Fuli ordered that no one was allowed to approach the courtyard where Du Xiaofu was staying. "Sigh, I originally thought that I would be able to slack off after coming out. I didn't expect that I would be so annoyed outside. Fortunately, I will be returning to the Profound Talisman sect this afternoon." Guoming sat down on a chair in a small hall within the courtyard and sighed deeply. "Are you going back this afternoon?" Du Xiaofu sat down beside Guoming when he heard that. "I've been out for a long time. I'm just following the elders of the sect to look around. The elders want to see if there are any suitable young people to bring back to the sect. It's time to go back." After Guoming finished speaking, he looked at Du Xiaofu and asked seriously, What are your plans for coming to the Central Plains? I came to the Central Plains to temper myself. I don't have any other plans, Du Xiaofu said. Is that so? Guoming raised his eyebrows and looked at Du Xiaofu. Brother Xiaofu, are you interested in joining the Profound Charm sect? I think with your talent, it won't be difficult for you to enter the Profound Charm sect. Moreover, it's not bad to join the Profound Charm sect. Du Xiaofu smiled, knowing that Guoming meant well. He said, there's no need for that. If there's a chance, I'll visit you at the Profound Charm sect. All right then. Guoming was a little disappointed. He thought that the sect behind Du Xiaofu wasn't simple. That was why he wasn't interested in joining the Profound Charm sect. Back in the barbaric Beast Mountain range, even the elders around him were wary of the expert behind him. After chatting for an hour, Guoming bid farewell and left. He had to go back to the Profound Charm sect with the elders in the afternoon. Du Xiaofu sent Guoming off. He gazed at Guoming's departing figure before he said to Huangfu Qi, Brother Huangfu, if you wish to enter the Profound Talisman School, can I help you ask around? Huangfu Qi smiled and shook his head. He said to Du Xiaofu, thank you, Brother Du, but there's no need for that. The Profound Charm sect is a colossus. Almost everyone in the younger generation wants to join it. However, I don't think it's suitable for me. I don't want to leave my current sect. All right. Du Xiaofu patted Huangfu Qi's shoulder and said, I'll take my leave too. I hope we'll meet again in the future. Du Xiaofu left as soon as he finished speaking. Huangfu Qi looked at the purple-robed figure and didn't chase after him. He only said, Brother Du, we'll meet again. The purple-robed figure waved his hand and left without looking back. 3 days later, early in the morning, on a quiet path in the mountain forest, the leaves of the trees hung low and the ground was covered in greenery. A purple-robed young man, carrying a broadsword wrapped in a purple cloth on his back, slowly walked on the small path. However, his pace was slow. After taking 2 steps, he would pause for a period of time. It was as if he was immersed in some kind of comprehension. Crackle! The purple-robed young man condensed a handprint in his hand. As he waved his hand, there was a faint ripple in the air. There was a strange electric glow. If one didn't pay attention, it would be hard to notice. Thank you, Brother Temperament 911, for awarding me to be promoted to Alliance Master. Thank you, brother. Also, I read that at the beginning of the Long River in the Central Province, the mysterious Dragon King was at the peak of the complete Beast King realm. However, later on, it was always at the peak of the Beast King realm. I apologize here. The previous part has been revised. The mysterious Dragon King's cultivation is now at the peak of the Beast King realm. Chapter 577. The purple-robed young man was naturally Du Xiaofu. After leaving the Bailing City, he headed towards the center of the central region. When there was no one around, he flew through the air and passed by many large cities and mountain ranges. With his speed, he had already left the Bailing Empire. For a moment, Du Xiaofu was like a headless fly. He did not know where to go. He wanted to find Du Xiaoqing, Du Xiaoyao, little tiger, his mother, and his sister, but he did not know where to start. 3 nights ago, Du Xiaofu checked his storage bag and accidentally saw the 2 sets of martial techniques that he had obtained from Gu Yu of the Divine Light Court. The aura that spread out from the 2 sets of martial techniques made Du Xiaofu feel an indescribable feeling. Therefore, Du Xiaofu opened one of the martial techniques. The martial technique was called Lightning Destruction Finger. It was only a marquis grade martial technique. However, when Du Xiaofu tried to cultivate it, he realized that although the Lightning Destruction Finger was not difficult to cultivate, it had the form but not the spirit. It could not even reach the power of a spiritual grade martial technique. After pondering, Du Xiaofu also felt puzzled. Why was he unable to cultivate the Lightning Destruction Finger? After that, Du Xiaofu opened the 2nd set of martial techniques. The 2nd set of martial techniques was called Divine Thunderstorm. It was a martial technique that had just reached the marquis grade. Du Xiaofu had seen Guyu use it before. Although it was not as mysterious as the first move, its power was definitely not ordinary. However, although it was extremely easy for Du Xiaofu to cultivate the divine thunderstorm at his current level of cultivation, it was the same as the lightning destruction finger. It had the form, but not the spirit. Its power was not even at the level that Guyu had used before. It seems like I'm lacking something, Du Xiaofu muttered softly. These two sets of martial techniques could be successfully cultivated in a relatively simple manner. However, if he wanted to activate their true might, he seemed to be lacking something. However, he was unable to sense what it was at this moment. Suddenly, Du Xiaofu looked ahead. In the morning light, there was the sound of wind breaking from afar. Swoosh, swoosh! A flowing light figure hurriedly rushed over, accompanied by the sound of rushing wind. At this moment, there seemed to be a couple of figures chasing after him. Save me! Save me! The figure that was rushing over from the front seemed to have seen Du Xiaofu and immediately cried for help. Du Xiaofu. The figure in front of him was a 16 or 17-year-old girl. She seemed to be slightly younger than Du Xiaofu. Her pitch-black eyes were incomparably pure. Her long eyelashes fluttered. Her nose was tall and pretty. Her red lips were sparkling and moist. Her snow-white teeth were like pearls that were suffused with a luster. However, this young girl's expression was extremely miserable at this moment. There were still some bloodstains on her gauzy dress. However, one could still clearly see her graceful figure. Her long black hair was tied up, and she was extremely beautiful. The young girl landed in front of Du Xiaofu. Originally, she thought that she had met her savior. However, when she saw that Du Xiaofu seemed to be about the same age as her pale face immediately changed. Her lips were like cherry petals as she hurriedly asked, "Are you here alone?" Du Xiaofu looked at the young girl who had suddenly rushed over to ask for help. For some unknown reason, he felt a sense of déjà vu. He nodded slightly and said, "That's right. I'm here alone. Why did you come to this desolate mountain by yourself? Hurry up and run. Those behind us are experts. It will be terrible if you are caught." As the young girl's voice faded, she immediately grabbed Du Xiaofu's hand and dragged Du Xiaofu along as she flew into the air. "Little girl, you won't be able to escape. Just surrender obediently." Swoosh, swoosh! The sound of rushing wind resounded. In a short instant, 3 figures rapidly descended. They formed a triangle formation and sealed off the young girl and Du Xiaofu, who were about to leave. The 3 burly men had cold gazes. Their auras were all powerful and fierce. Their cultivation auras were all at the initial martial marquis level. Not good. The young girl's beautiful face turned serious. She let go of Du Xiaofu's hand and gripped a green sword that had already reached the level of a practitioner weapon. The aura of the peak of the perfect pulse spirit realm rippled from her body. She shielded Du Xiaofu behind her as she vigilantly looked at the 3 people around her. Then she said to Du Xiaofu, "Hurry up and run. I'll stop them. Run as far as you can." Du Xiaofu had not said a word. He was being pulled along by the young girl for no reason. Now that he was being protected by the young girl, he could not help but recall the time when his elder sister Du Xiaoman protected him in the same way back in Stone City. "Why aren't you running? Hurry up and run." Sensing that Du Xiaofu did not respond behind her, the young girl turned her head and immediately said anxiously to Du Xiaofu. She said, coquettishly and angrily, "If you don't run, you will be killed by them." "Don't worry, they can't kill me." Du Xiaofu smiled and glanced at the 3 people around him. Then he turned his head and smiled at the young girl. He said, "Why do they want to kill you? Can you tell me? They are evil people. Do they need a reason? You look quite smart. Are you an idiot?" The young girl glared at Du Xiaofu. In the world of cultivators and in the wilderness, there was no need for a reason to kill people. Then she said, "However, they don't seem to want to kill me. They want to capture me alive. If I fall into their hands, I will die even more miserably. Kiki, where did this wild brat come from? Since you have encountered him, then die." As the young girl's voice fell, the eyes of a big man on the left trembled. He was the closest to Du Xiaofu. It seemed that he wanted to get rid of Du Xiaofu first. He waved his hand, and a claw directly swept towards Du Xiaofu. He did not put Du Xiaofu in his eyes at all. In the eyes of this big man, killing a 17 or 18-year-old brat in the wilderness was as easy as taking something out of his pocket. It was as easy as blowing off dust. Swish! The strength of the great Han martial lord was not weak. His aura was fierce and fierce. The claw was like a beast's claw. In the blink of an eye, it fell in front of Du Xiaofu. The aura collapsed, causing the space to tremble and ripple. Dodge! At this moment, the young girl's beautiful face turned pale. She shouted and was about to save him. Boom! A low, muffled sound of energy was heard, covering the young girl's shout. Poochie! Just as the young girl was about to make a move, no one could clearly see what was going on. They only saw the big man who had just attacked Du Xiaofu stop. Then he spat out a mouthful of blood. In the end, his body was directly sent flying and heavily fell to the ground. The big man's body smashed into the ground and shook the mountains. His body did not get up again. It was as if he had been directly shocked to death. This scene caused the expressions of the three people to change greatly. They did not even see anyone make a move. A martial lord who had just reached the early stage of the martial lord realm had actually died in a baffling manner. Not good, there's an expert. After the two big men recovered from their shock, they immediately turned around and fled as if they had seen a ghost. Bang bang. At the same time, just as the two big men's figures rushed out, two invisible energy strength chis flew out from who knows where. Like lightning piercing through space, they flew into the back of the two men's heads like lightning, destroying their defenses as easily as breaking through dry weeds. The bodies of the two martial lords, who had just reached the early stage of the martial lord realm, fell to the ground from midair. Blood was dripping from their bodies. Their eyes were filled with shock and fear. They did not even know how they died. The young girl gasped in shock. Her pair of pure big eyes looked around, but she did not see anyone. Then her pitch-black eyes looked at Du Xiaofu with shock and said, "Were you the one who killed them?" "No, I don't have that kind of strength." Du Xiaofu's expression did not reveal a trace as he faintly smiled and said. The young girl looked at Du Xiaofu for a while. Her eyes slightly blinked as she muttered to herself, "That's true. How can you have that kind of strength? Look at you, you're also in a daze." "How am I in a daze?" Du Xiaofu's eyes twitched. This was the first time someone had called him in a daze. The young girl did not pay attention to Du Xiaofu. She looked at the sky and continued to size up, as if she wanted to know who had just killed the three martial lord realm cultivators. Seeing that the young girl was ignoring him, Du Xiaofu felt helpless. He then walked towards the three martial lord realm cultivators who had been killed and unceremoniously took out their chinquan bags and put them into his arms. The young girl, not far away, looked around for a while. She did not find the expert who had just killed them. She respectfully bowed and said, "Senior, thank you for saving us." I don't know which senior was passing by. Morong Xiang greets you. As her voice fell, the young girl looked at the sky. After a long time, she did not receive a reply. She could not help but feel a little disappointed. Du Xiaofu came to the young girl's side and said with a smile, "The expert who killed them must have gone far away. Experts of that level do not even bother to show their faces." There were some ripples in the young girl's pure eyes, after which she gently glanced at Du Xiaofu. She opened her mouth and softly said, "What you said makes sense. The expert who attacked should have already left." "Are you called Morong Xiang?" Du Xiaofu asked the young girl. "Yes, my name is Morong Xiang. I'm from Fertile City. What's your name? Where are you from? Why are you here alone?" The young girl asked Du Xiaofu. "Fertile City, Morong." Hearing this, Du Xiaofu's clear eyes suddenly rippled. He looked at Morong Xiang. Her appearance was somewhat similar to Morong Yoroa. When he came to the central province, Morong Yoroa had mentioned that if there was a chance, he could help her check out the current situation of the Morong family in Fertile City. Chapter 578. What? Have you been to Fertile City? Seeing Du Xiaofu's reaction, the girl seemed to be confused and asked Du Xiaofu, "No, I've only heard of Fertile City." Du Xiaofu smiled and said to Morong Xiang, Are you from the Morong clan of Fertile City?" Of course. Morong Xiang did not seem surprised that Du Xiaofu knew about the Morong family of Fertile Field City. Fertile Field City was famous everywhere. It was one of the biggest cities in the Allied Empire. Among them, the Morong family was famous. Who knows how many people knew about the Morong family of Fertile Field City? Ayo! Suddenly, the cry of a ferocious bird could be heard from the distance. The air in the distance whistled like a gale. Then, a huge ferocious bird that looked like an eagle or a leopard with a ferocious mouth spread its wings and flew into the sky. The wind whistled and caused the rocks to fly in all directions. Swoosh, swoosh! Then, a dozen figures jumped down from the ferocious bird. Looking at the girl's sorry state, a sturdy middle-aged man in short clothes immediately came forward and asked with concern, "Xiang, are you okay?" "Third uncle, I'm fine. It's just that many of our Morong clan's disciples were killed by those people." Morong Xiang's eyes dimmed. Then she looked at the middle-aged man and asked in surprise, "Why are you here so quickly?" Morong Xiang was surprised. She had sent out a distress signal. Logically speaking, the people of the clan should not have arrived so quickly. "We were looking for you nearby. Recently, our Morong clan has been attacked many times. As for who did it, the clan will investigate. We were worried that you would encounter misfortune outside. It's good that you're fine." The middle-aged man let out a sigh of relief. He looked at the 3 corpses on the ground and frowned. He could tell that the 3 of them were martial lords. Then he looked at Du Xiaofu, who was beside Morong Xiang, and asked Morong Xiang, "Is this the person you found?" "No, I haven't found the person I'm looking for. I just met him, Dai. Because of me, he was almost killed by the 3 people who were chasing after me." Morong Xiang shook her head and said to the middle-aged man, "It should be an expert who happened to pass by and saved me." Hearing this, a rather good-looking young man in luxurious clothes beside the middle-aged man immediately glanced at Du Xiaofu with some disdain in his eyes. The middle-aged man looked around and didn't seem to sense the aura of other experts. He didn't greet Du Xiaofu and then said to Morong Xiang, Xiang, we should go back. In 3 days, there will be a battle between our Morong and Gongsun clans. It is of great importance. Has Big Brother Xiaorui come out of seclusion?" Morong Xiang's beautiful face suddenly became dignified at the middle-aged man's words. "Your brother, Xiaorui, should be coming out of seclusion soon. But this time the Gongsun family has Gongsun Bao, who has returned from the Divine Light Court. I'm afraid." The middle-aged man sighed slightly and then said to Morong Xiang, "Let's go back first." "Okay." Morong Xiang nodded, then turned to Du Xiaofu and said, "You fool! This wilderness is very dangerous. Do you want me to take you to Fertile Field City?" Du Xiaofu looked at Morong Xiang and immediately nodded with a smile. "Thank you, Miss Morong." As his voice fell, Du Xiaofu took the initiative to walk to Morong Xiang's side, causing the middle-aged man's eyes to flicker slightly. The arrogant young man in luxurious clothes glared fiercely at Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu acted as if he didn't see the young man's gaze and didn't care. There was a faint smile on his face, and he really looked a little dazed. A moment later, the fierce bird that looked like an eagle or a leopard let out a cry and flapped its wings, causing the air to howl like a gale. Then, the fierce bird flapped its wings and carried everyone away. Du Xiaofu sat cross-legged on the back of the fierce bird. He didn't care about the gazes of the people of the Morong family. He closed his eyes and began to meditate. The middle-aged man secretly sized up Du Xiaofu, but then his gaze disappeared. Finally, he seemed to have thought of something, and his expression became quite solemn. After stuffing a pill into her mouth, Morong Xiang sat down cross-legged and began to regulate her breathing. A moment later, her graceful body was shrouded in a circle of faint rune light. The fierce bird sped away. At dusk, there was a fluctuation of aura on the back of the fierce bird. Du Xiaofu also slowly opened his eyes, and a vast city appeared in front of him. The city stretched on endlessly, and there were many towering buildings that were majestic and magnificent, causing people to feel awe in their hearts. The fierce bird flew directly into the huge city. Even in the air, they could hear the hustle and bustle of the huge city. The streets were densely packed with people, and it was extremely prosperous. A moment later, the fierce bird stopped in the square outside a vast courtyard. Figures rushed down from the back of the fierce bird, and there were already many strong men with fierce auras who came forward to pay their respects. Greetings, Third Mississippi greetings, Third Master. Du Xiaofu landed on the back of the fierce bird and looked at the cultivation building in front of him. In front of the vermilion door, there were fierce stone sculptures of strange beasts that looked like tigers and lions. The golden plaque in front of the door was engraved with the words, Morong family. The building had a majestic aura, and it was not difficult to see that the Morong family was not ordinary. From the middle-aged man's cultivation level, Du Xiaofu had already guessed that the Morong family's power in Fertile City was not small. He did not expect Morong Yu Ruo to come from such a family. He did not know why she had appeared in Lanling City. Morong Xiang said to Du Xiaofu, "Idiot, this is Fertile City. Be careful. Don't run around if you have nothing to do in the future. Otherwise, you will be killed without knowing." "So this is Fertile Field City," Du Xiaofu smiled faintly. Looking at the majestic Morong residence, he said to Morong Xiang, Young Miss Morong, I have nowhere to go in Fertile Field City. Can you take me in for a few days? I'll leave after a few days." "Boy, you are too insatiable. Who do you think you are? Do you think the Morong family is your home?" As soon as Du Xiaofu's voice fell, the well-dressed young man who had been looking at Du Xiaofu with disdain suddenly shouted coldly, "Leave now, or I will not be polite to you." The dignified Morong family, Du Xiaofu sighed slightly. He didn't take the well-dressed young man's cold words to heart and only sighed slightly. Morong Xiang frowned slightly and said to the well-dressed young man, "Brother Qinjun, he's a guest from afar. I almost got him into trouble earlier. Let him stay in the Morong family for a few days. Sister Xiang, this boy is of unknown origin." When the well-dressed young man saw Morong Xiang, speaking up for Du Xiaofu, the coldness in his eyes became even more intense. "That's enough, Qinjun. He is a guest from afar. Can't our Morong family afford a guest?" The middle-aged man spoke up and stopped the well-dressed young man. Then he said to Du Xiaofu, "May I know your name and where you are from?" Du Xiaofu nodded slightly and replied to the middle-aged man, "Du Xiaofu is from the Bailing Empire. I am Morong Hankan of the Morong family. I am the third son. Since you have nowhere to go, you can stay in the Morong family for the time being. There are some things happening in the Morong family these days, so please forgive me if I do not take good care of you." The middle-aged man said to Du Xiaofu, "Third Master Morong, you are too polite. I am already grateful that you are willing to take me in." Du Xiaofu nodded slightly. His attitude was neither servile nor overbearing. "Come, take little brother Du to the guest room." The middle-aged man then ordered the servants around him. "Please," a young man who looked to be in his late 20s immediately stepped forward and led Du Xiaofu into the Morong family. "Third Master, this kid's origin is unknown. Why did you let him in? Maybe he was sent by the Gongsun family." After seeing Du Xiaofu's figure disappear into the Morong family's gate, the well-dressed young man in the square suddenly asked Morong Hankan, "Qinjun, don't provoke Du Xiaofu. Remember." Morong Hankan said to the well-dressed young man, Then he turned to Morong Xiang, and asked Xiang, did you really meet him on the way? Morong Xiang nodded in confusion. What's wrong, third uncle? Is there a problem? Is that so? Morong Hankin pondered for a moment and then said to the people around him, let's go in. Also, tell the family members not to go out for a few days. Someone is secretly plotting against the Morong family. The family will investigate as soon as possible. The Morong family was a first-rate family in Fertile Field City. Their mansion was majestic, but it was not luxurious. In fact, it even had an antique feel to it. There was a winding corridor, a rockery, and a small pond. There was also a scholarly atmosphere. Du Xiaofu was led to a guest room by the young man in the Morong family. Although it was called a guest room, it was actually a separate courtyard. The environment was quiet and clean. At dusk, the sun was setting. In front of the courtyard, Du Xiaofu stood quietly for a while. Then he returned to his room and sat down. A moment later, his body was shrouded in a circle of white light. At night, Fertile Field City was shrouded in moonlight. In the sky, the moon was dark and the stars were bright. Outside a courtyard, a young man with a slender figure was quietly looking up at the dark sky with a moon and stars. His eyes flickered with a faint light in the night sky, as if they were flashing with electricity. Bauer. As his voice fell, an old man in his 60s appeared behind the young man. Chapter 579. Father! The young man lowered his head and turned around. He exuded a cold aura. The light in his eyes was restrained and sharp. The old man looked to be in his 60s. He wore a monochromatic, patterned robe. There was a gloomy aura between his brows. There was no aura around him, but it caused the surrounding space to distort. He looked up at the cold young man and said, Bao, are you ready in 3 days? The young man looked to be around 25 or 26 years old. When he heard that, a sharp light flashed in his eyes. A faint chill flashed across his eyes as he said, the Morong family only has Morong Xiaorui, who is passable, but he's not my opponent at all. The Morong family doesn't have anyone to invite now. 3 days later, it's time to take revenge for Big Brother. After so many years, the Morong family should pay the price. It has been more than 10 years. It is time to pay the price. The gloomy aura between the old man's brows became thicker. The night covered the sky. The faint moonlight shone through the night clouds and fell on Fertile Field City. In a quiet and simple courtyard, Morong Han looked at an old man in his 60s. He said, Elder brother, I have roughly investigated. The people who have attacked our Morong family recently should be from the Gongsun family. Sigh! Hearing this, the old man turned around and sighed. He looked to be in his 60s, but his face was ruddy and smooth. He looked very young. It was not hard to tell that he was a handsome man when he was young. After sighing, the old man said to Morong Han, It has been more than 10 years. The Gongsun family has been pestering us. It seems that with the divine light court behind them, they are starting to get worse. 3 days later, the younger generation of our 2 families will compete. There will be a total of 3 rounds. Other than Xiaorui, no one can compete with the younger generation of the Gongsun family, especially that Gongsun Bao. It is said that he is extremely extraordinary in the Divine Light Palace. Morong Han had a serious expression. This is also fate. My Morong family's cultivation method has always only been suitable for men to practice. It's not suitable for women. Among us 3 brothers, you haven't married yet. The second brother gave birth to Xiaorui, but I gave birth to 3 daughters. None of us have a son, but the 2 older ones are still disobedient. The old man's eyes dimmed. Then he looked at Morong Han and said, Counter soldiers with arms, water with an earthware. We'll see when the time comes. This is a calamity that will befall our Morong family sooner or later. The Morong family has come all this way. It's not that easy to fall. The next morning, Morong Hankins, Morong Han, Morong Han, Morong Han and Han. Who In the room, the white glow around Du Xiaofu's body was withdrawn. He opened his eyes, and the glow was withdrawn. A mouthful of turbid air was spat out from his abdomen as a faint smile appeared on his face. Practicing that mysterious, incomplete qi method, the training of mental energy and spiritual strength was extremely fast, causing Du Xiaofu to frequently exclaim in admiration. Peering into it with his mind, Du Xiaofu smiled slightly and murmured, "I have comprehended a martial technique. I don't know if the mysterious move can be perfected." As soon as his voice fell, Du Xiaofu immediately immersed himself in the divine thunderstorm and lightning destruction finger that he had recently cultivated. Unable to activate the true power of these two martial techniques, Du Xiaofu's stubbornness rose. He wanted to try and see if he could activate the power of these two martial techniques after perfecting the mysterious move. Walala! In the room, Du Xiaofu's hand seals were constantly changing. There were runes constantly flashing, and there was a faint flash of lightning. He gradually sank into comprehension. Time passed slowly. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. The entire fertile field city became more lively as a large number of powerhouses and forces swarmed in. The battle between the younger generation of the Gongsun family and the Morong family could be considered a competition between the two families. Naturally, it was enough to attract many people's attention. There were many empires and alliances around. Within the Alliance Empire, Fertile Field City was one of the largest cities. There were 3 major families in Fertile Field City. They were the Morong family, the Gongsun family, and the Wu family. These 3 families were powerful and controlled many cities around Fertile Field City. They were separated from the imperial family. Their strength was so great that the surrounding empires were afraid of them. Many people in Fertile Field City knew about the feud between the Morong family and the Gongsun family. The head of the Morong family, Morong Hanlin's eldest daughter, Morong Yuyu, was childhood sweethearts with the head of the Gongsun family, Gongsun Changkong's eldest son, Gongsun Hu. Although they were not engaged, the entire Fertile Field City saw them as a couple. Who knew that more than 10 years ago, Morong Yuyu suddenly fell in love with a young man and even eloped with him? Naturally, Gongsun Hu was unwilling. When Morong Yuyu and the young man were about to elope, he wanted to kill the young man, who knew that he would be the one to suffer heavy injuries and lose his life. The Gongsun family had always blamed the Morong family for this. The feud between the two families had been buried deep since then. These two families often fought. For more than 10 years, they had never stopped. There were countless casualties on both sides, and the feud grew deeper. Recently, the two families had discussed to let the younger generation settle this matter. The winner would win 2 out of 3 rounds. The losing family would have to hand over half of their territory for free. It was equivalent to a small empire. The stakes were so high that it shocked everyone. It also attracted the attention of countless forces. On the evening of the 3rd day, the sun set and the red clouds covered the sky. In the room, Du Xiaofu condensed hand seals one after another, completely entering a state of comprehension. In the Morong family, a figure appeared in the courtyard of the guest room. He looked to be in his 20s. He was dressed in luxurious clothes and had a good appearance. However, his expression was somewhat gloomy. Brother Qinjun, a few young men jumped out and stood respectfully beside the young man in luxurious clothes. "How is it?" The young man in luxurious clothes asked the few young men. His gaze was gloomy. "That kid hasn't come out for 3 days. I don't know what he's doing inside." One of the young men said to the young man in luxurious clothes, "Brother Qinjun, do you want us to go and take a look? If it's not working, we can teach that kid a lesson and drag him out." The young man in luxurious clothes seemed to be a little tempted. His gaze was slightly gloomy. Just as he was about to speak, a delicate voice sounded. "Brother Qinjun, what are you doing here?" As soon as the delicate voice sounded, a 16 or 17-year-old girl slowly walked over. She had a youthful face, but her figure was graceful. Her black hair was tied up in a bun. She had an extremely beautiful face and a pair of pure black eyes. It was Murong Xiang. Sister Xiang. Why are you here? We were just strolling around and just arrived. When the young man saw Murong Xiang, he immediately smiled. The few young men behind him also quickly smiled. Is that so? Murong Xiang raised her eyebrows and said to the young man, Brother Shirue has come out of seclusion and is looking for you. Brother Shirue has come out of seclusion? When the young man heard this, his face suddenly changed and a look of awe appeared in his eyes. Murong Xiang ignored Murong Chinjun and walked towards the courtyard of the guest room in front. You guys help me look after 3rd Mississippi. I'm going to see Brother Shirue. Murong Chinjun looked at Murong Xiang's beautiful figure and did not dare to say anything. He whispered to the young men beside him and then gloomily glared at the courtyard where Du Xiaofu was before leaving. Idiot, are you here? A clear voice sounded from outside the courtyard. Murong Xiang looked into the courtyard. 3rd Miss Murong, why are you here? Du Xiaofu slowly walked out from the courtyard. He was carrying a broadsword on his back, which looked like it would never be removed. His resolute and handsome face carried a faint smile. Although he was comprehending, the surrounding activity was unable to escape the probing of Du Xiaofu's mental, spiritual strength. Murong Xiang slightly raised her eyes to look at Du Xiaofu. Her long eyelashes fluttered and her nose was straight. Her sparkling and moist red lips were slightly opened, revealing her pearl-like white teeth. She said, I'm here to see if you're used to living in the Murong family. Can you accompany me to a place? Du Xiaofu looked outside the courtyard and then nodded. He said to Murong Xiang, okay, I'll go with you. The sun set and the silver-gray evening dew enveloped the entire fertile field city. A moment later, outside the Murong family mansion, there was a quiet path in the city. The ancient trees on both sides were dense and majestic. A crescent moon hung quietly in the southwest sky. The cold moonlight sprinkled on the earth, making it look quite gloomy. Murong Xiang walked quietly and did not speak along the way. Du Xiaofu quietly followed beside Murong Xiang. Along the way, he looked at the night scenery of the path and enjoyed it. From Stone City to Fertile Field City, Du Xiaofu rarely had such leisure time in the past few years, even though there were still many worries in his heart. After a long time, Murong Xiang stopped and looked at Du Xiaofu beside her. She asked, Do you have an elder sister or elder brother? Du Xiaofu paused and said, Yes, I have an elder sister and a second brother. They are the daughter and son of my first and second uncles. They have been very good to me since I was young. Brother Shirue is also very good to me. Murong Xiang said softly, then looked at Du Xiaofu and said, But now I'm asking if you have an elder sister or elder brother. Hearing this, Du Xiaofu's eyes moved slightly. His deep eyes twinkled like stars in the night sky. After a moment, he said softly to Murong Xiang, I have a twin sister, but we were separated when we were young. Murong Xiang slightly raised her brows and looked at Du Xiaofu. There were some ripples in her pure eyes. She said, Then you must miss her very much? Yes, I miss her very much. Du Xiaofu smiled faintly, secretly missing her in his heart. I also miss my elder sister and second sister very much. Murong Xiang's eyelashes fluttered, her eyes filled with sorrow. The night breeze caressed her face, causing her hair to sway slightly. She said softly, It's a pity that my elder sister is no longer in this world. I also don't know where my second sister is. At that time, I was too young and can't even remember what she looked like. Chapter 580. Looking at the girl in front of him, Du Xiaofu hesitated for a moment before asking, Is your second sister called Murong Yuruha? How do you know? Hearing this, Murong Xiang's expression changed. She looked at Du Xiaofu in shock. I heard it from your servant. Du Xiaofu raised his eyebrows and said to Murong Xiang, I believe that it won't be long before your second sister comes back. She will miss you as much. Yes, I believe so too. Murong Xiang, or did not doubt Du Xiaofu's words. She smiled and said softly, I heard that my eldest sister left behind a daughter. She seems to be about the same age as me. I wonder how she is now. Does she look like my eldest sister? I believe that she must be very beautiful. She looks like your eldest sister. She might even look like you, Du Xiaofu said. In his mind, he could not help but think of that innocent girl. Okay, thank you for coming out with me. Murong Xiang smiled happily. She then looked at Du Xiaofu and said, I didn't know that a fool like you would be so good at comforting people. Du Xiaofu smiled bitterly and said, My name is Du Xiaofu, not Fool. But I like to call you Fool. Murong Xiang pouted and then looked at Du Xiaofu. She said, Tomorrow is the day of the competition between the younger generation of the Murong clan and the Gongsun clan. Perhaps this is a calamity for the Murong clan. If you are interested, you can come with us tomorrow. Maybe after tomorrow, you won't be able to stay in the Murong clan anymore. Is the Murong clan in trouble? Can you tell me about it? When Du Xiaofu heard this, his eyes moved slightly, and he asked Murong Xiang, Murong Yurua had asked him to come to Fertile Field City to see the situation of the Murong family. If the Murong family was in trouble, even if he could not help, he had to do something. Otherwise, he would not be able to go back to see Murong Yurua and Daixingyu in the future. It's related to my eldest sister and brother-in-law from Murong Xiang. Du Xiaofu learned everything about the Murong clan and the Gongsun clan. It all originated from Dai Xingyu's mother and father. Gongsun brought people to kill my brother-in-law. But in the end, for some reason, he went mad and died. He was not killed, but because of that, the Gongsun clan and the Murong. The Gongsun clan and the Gongsun clan have a grudge, and in the past, of the Gongsun clan and the Murong clan, Gongsun clan and Murong, the Gongsun clan and of Murong Gongsuans of the Gongsun of the Sun clan and the Gongsun of Nun God. Murong Xiang sighed softly, her charming face dimmed. I hope nothing will happen to the Murong clan this time. Don't worry, nothing will happen to the Murong family. Du Xiaofu said softly. There were some ripples in his clear eyes. He hadn't expected that Dai Xingyu's parents would be involved. When the two people returned to Murong family, the moon was already hanging high in the sky. You should rest early. In the Murong manor, Murong Xiang sent Du Xiaofu to the courtyard of the guest room. Then she waved goodbye and left. Under the moonlight, her beautiful figure disappeared into the long corridor. Watching the graceful and adorable figure disappear, Du Xiaofu looked at the courtyard and secretly moved. Then he stood with his hands behind his back and slowly walked into the courtyard. Chi! As soon as Du Xiaofu stepped into the courtyard, the sound of wind breaking resounded. A fist wrapped in runes, accompanied by a powerful energy wind, directly attacked Du Xiaofu from behind. However, when the fist smashed down, Du Xiaofu's figure seemed to move slowly, but for some reason, he just so happened to dodge the fist. After which, he continued to walk into the courtyard as if he was completely unaware of it. A figure appeared under the moonlight. It was Murong Qinjun. Murong Qinjuan's face was a little puzzled when his fist did not land on the target. However, he thought it was a coincidence. His expression became gloomier and a chill ran through his eyes. He said coldly, Brat, a toad wants to eat swan meat. It turns out that you shamelessly entered the Murong family to have ideas about Sister Xiang. Let me tell you, Sister Xiang is mine. You are courting death. Murong Qinjuan's dark chi surged, and his fist was once again wrapped in runes. The aura of a martial marquis, who had just ascended to the martial marquis stage, caused the surrounding space to tremble. Boom! Then, in front of the shocking fist, the space distorted like broken stones. With a loud bang, he appeared behind Du Xiaofu. In a short moment, his fist was about to land on Du Xiaofu's back. Boom! As the fist blasted out, the space trembled violently. In front of the fist, Du Xiaofu's figure disappeared like a ghost. Murong Qinjuan's fist missed again. At this moment, Murong Qinjuan's expression changed. He didn't even see how the other party disappeared. Just as Murong Qinjuan's expression changed, Du Xiaofu's purple-robed figure, who had just disappeared, reappeared in his line of sight. They were less than half a meter apart. When their eyes met, Murong Qinjuan's clear eyes revealed a frightening sharpness. For no reason, Murong Qinjuan's body trembled. Even his soul trembled. Chi-Chi, Murong Qinjuan was shocked and fearful. He wanted to quickly retreat. Swish, swish! However, it was at this moment that numerous talisman seals shot out, and a seal instantly descended onto his body. His profound energy stagnated, and he was instantly unable to move or even speak. In the courtyard, Du Xiaofu was still standing with his hands behind his back. It was as if he was not the one who had done all this. He slowly walked into the courtyard. Murong Qinjuan, who was sealed and unable to move, was left in the courtyard. He was dumbfounded, and his heart trembled. Du Xiaofu had actually sealed him with runes so easily. If he wanted to kill him, it would be as easy as flipping his hand. Thinking of this, Murong Qinjuan's body trembled, and cold sweat broke out on his back. However, it was too late for regrets. The next morning, when dawn had just passed and the first rays of the morning sun shone on Fertile Field City. In the entire Fertile Field City, a large number of people had already begun to move toward the city's central square. The central square was the largest flat area in the entire Fertile Field City. Whenever there was a major event or ceremony in the city, it would be held in the central square. The battle between the younger generation of the Murong family and the Gongsun family naturally had to be held in the central square to accommodate so many spectators. Therefore, it did not take long for a dense crowd to gather in the central square of Fertile Field City in the early morning. In the central square, waves of aura rippled and noisy discussions gathered, resounding through the clouds. Huff! In the courtyard of the Murong family's guest room, a purple-robed young man with a purple broadsword on his back slowly walked out. After slightly stretching his back, he slowly walked into the courtyard and stood in front of Murong Qinjuan, who had been standing there for the entire night. When Murong Qinjuan saw the purple-robed young man in front of him, his eyes instinctively trembled, but his body could not move at all. His trembling eyes were proof of the fear in his heart. "You like your third miss? Say, if your third miss knows that you are no match for me, I'm afraid you won't be able to raise your head in front of her in the future." Du Xiaofu looked at Murong Qinjuan, who had been sealed, and said with a faint smile, "It's about time. Bring me to watch the battle between the younger generation of the Murong family and the Gongsun family. I believe that you will keep this a secret for yourself, right?" As soon as he finished speaking, Du Xiaofu's hands landed on Murong Qinjuan's body. Dang dang! As the seal was opened, Murong Qinjuan's body staggered back 2 steps. Perhaps because he had been standing for the entire night, he almost fell to the ground. Looking at Du Xiaofu's gaze, Murong Qinjuan was filled with fear, as if he had seen a ghost. He did not dare to stay any longer and hurriedly ran out of the courtyard. Sigh! Du Xiaofu smiled bitterly and sighed slightly, then left the courtyard. He was also quite interested in the battle between the younger generation of the 2 families. After a while, Du Xiaofu saw the people of the Murong family who were preparing to leave. The Murong family is really not weak. Waves of auras secretly surged. In a group of nearly 100 people, there were at least 2 martial kings and even more martial lords. This caused Du Xiaofu to secretly sigh in his heart. The Murong family strength was indeed not weak. "Idiot, you're here. Come with us." When Murong Xiang saw Du Xiaofu, she immediately waved at Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu did not stand on ceremony and directly walked towards Murong Xiang. He glanced at the crowd and saw that Murong Qinjuan, who had just fled, was also there. At this moment, Murong Qinjuan looked at Du Xiaofu with trembling eyes. However, he pretended that nothing had happened. This pretense was quite impressive, As Du Xiaofu walked towards Morong Xiang, many people curiously looked at Du Xiaofu. Although Du Xiaofu had already been in the Morong Manor for 3 days, in these 3 days, Du Xiaofu did not show his face in the manor. Therefore, not many people knew of Du Xiaofu's existence, let alone Du Xiaofu's origin. Seeing that the strange, purple-robed young man seemed to have a good relationship with the third miss, no one asked much. The 2 martial king realm old men, who should be the elders of the Morong family, looked at Du Xiaofu, and 2 obscure auras secretly fell on Du Xiaofu. However, to their disappointment, they were unable to pry anything out of Du Xiaofu's body. Chapter 581. Greetings, Master. Greetings, Second Master. The crowd was in an uproar. Du Xiaofu looked in the direction of the gaze and saw a few figures slowly approaching. The one in front was an old man in his 60s. He had a ruddy complexion and looked extremely young. Behind him was a big man in his 40s. It was Morong Hankan. Behind the 2 of them was a tall and slender young man. He looked to be around 24 or 25 years old. His skin was fair and his facial features were delicate with a touch of handsomeness. He wore a slightly tight-fitting white shirt that revealed his perfect figure. Martial Lord Nirvana Realm. The young man retracted his aura. However, it was not easy to retract his aura under Du Xiaofu's prying eyes. The aura of a martial Lord Nirvana Realm cultivation was immediately detected by Du Xiaofu. To reach the martial Lord Nirvana Realm cultivation at such a young age, his talent was definitely extraordinary. Father! Seeing the old man in his 60s approaching, Morong Xiang immediately walked over. The old man in his 60s nodded his head slightly. Then he raised his gaze slightly. Finally, his gaze landed on Du Xiaofu in the crowd. He slowly walked towards Du Xiaofu. At the same time he said to Morong Hankan beside him, "Third brother, is this the little brother Du Xiaofu that you mentioned before?" "That's right. This is little brother Du Xiaofu. Xiang, I met him on the way," Morong Hankan said softly. Seeing the old man walking over, Du Xiaofu secretly probed the aura of the old man. It was actually difficult to detect. The aura that was faintly emitted from the old man's body made Du Xiaofu feel that the cultivation of the Morong family's master, Morong Hanlin, was definitely not below that of Vice Dean Zhuge Changbang. Could it be the martial emperor realm? Du Xiaofu was secretly shocked. However, he did not show it in his eyes. He cupped his fist and bowed. "You must be the master of the Morong family. Du Xiaofu greets you." "You're welcome. You're a guest from afar." Morong Hanlin faintly smiled. Then he looked at the people in front of him. His face looked serious as he said softly, "It's almost time. Let's go." The fertile field city was already crowded with people, and it was bustling with noise and excitement. Today it was even more lively. Today, as the younger generation of the Morong family and the Gongsun family of the fertile field city were competing, half of the territory was at stake. Naturally, no one would miss such a lively scene. News had already spread that the younger generation of the Gongsun family was full of talents. Not only were there Gongsun-ing and Gongsun-ji, who were already famous in Fertile Field City, but there was also Gongsun-bao, who was accepted by the Divine Light Court as an inner court disciple. It was said that Gongsun-bao was extremely famous even in the Divine Light Court. He was even more famous in Fertile Field City. He had a lot of halos around him since he was young, and his name was known throughout Fertile Field City. On the contrary, the Morong family had fewer talents, especially males. The only one who could support the younger generation of the Morong family was Morong Xiao Rue. Although Morong Xiao Rue was also famous in Fertile Field City and was extremely talented, most people would still choose Gongsun Bao if they were to compare him with Gongsun Bao. As for the rest of the younger generation of the Morong family, only Morong Qinjun was worthy of being mentioned in public. It was said that Morong Qinjun came from a branch of the Morong family and was extremely talented. However, compared to Morong Xiao Rue, he was far from enough. As time passed, A dense crowd had already gathered around the central square of Fertile Field City. It was a black mass that covered the sky and the earth. At the head of the square, there was a towering stone platform that was arranged with unnecessary seats. At this time, many people were seated, and the surrounding onlookers could also recognize them. Those who were qualified to sit at the head of the table and could have a panoramic view of the entire square from above were the leaders and experts of the major forces in Fertile Field City. Ordinary people did not have the qualifications to sit there. Today, the younger generation of the Morong family and the Gongsun family were competing, and the stakes were half of the family. They had also invited all the influential people in Fertile Field City to be the judges and witnesses. Many people also saw the figure of the Wu family in the high seats. The Wu family was another one of the three major families in Fertile Field City. Its strength, the Morong family, and the Gongsun family were enough to form a tripartite balance of forces. Naturally, a scene like today was inevitable. At the head of the table, there were nearly 100 people clustered around, and there were 20 to 30 people sitting upright. Each of them was wearing a badge with the word Gongsun embroidered on it, which symbolized that they were members of the Gongsun family. At the head of the table, an old man who looked to be in his 60s was sitting upright. He was the current patriarch of the Gongsun family, Gongsun Chongkong. His expression was rather gloomy, and he would occasionally lower his head and talk to an old man beside him with a respectful expression. Beside Gongsun Chongkong, a slender young man was sitting upright. His entire body emitted a faint and cold aura, and the light in his eyes was restrained. As time gradually passed, more and more people gathered in the central square. The surrounding area was so crowded that not even a drop of water could trickle through, and the clamor resounded through the sky. The sound waves spread so far that the entire Fertile Field City could hear it. Just as the crowd was waiting eagerly, a large group of figures finally appeared at the entrance of the central square. As the crowd appeared, the entire square began to become more and more restless. The people from the Morong family are finally here. This time, the Morong family's main target should be Morong Xiao Rue. Only Morong Xiao Rue is the strongest in the Morong family. I heard that the Gongsun family spread the news that they'll teach the people from the Morong family a lesson today. As the people from the Morong family arrived, there were endless discussions in the surroundings. Amidst the discussions, the people from the Morong family also slowly ascended to the high platform in the central square. The people from the Wu family nodded slightly to the people from the Morong family as a form of greeting. However, the people from the Gongsun family didn't look very good. Most of them even looked at each other coldly. Morong Hanlin, I thought you wouldn't dare to come today. As the people from the Morong family arrived, Gongsun Chongkong slightly raised his eyebrows. There was a faint gloominess between his brows. Why wouldn't I come? You're the one who came early. As Morong Hanlin spoke, he directly sat in front of the row of seats that had been empty. He secretly sighed to himself. Back then, the Morong family and the Gongsun family had the best relationship, but now they were like fire and water, and their hatred was as deep as the sea. After Morong Hanlin sat down, Morong Honkan and the old experts of the Morong family all sat down. Du Xiaofu originally planned to stand aside and watch the fun, but he was pulled to sit by Morong Xiang, which immediately attracted a lot of attention, especially Morong Qinjun, whose eyes were almost burning with anger. However, when he thought of what happened last night, his eyes immediately surged with fear. He was angry, but he didn't dare to say anything. He suppressed his anger, and his face turned red. Don't talk nonsense. Who from the Morong family will fight in the first round? In the competition, life and death are your own responsibility. Hurry up. Gongsun Ji was extremely impatient, as if he didn't want to talk to Morong Hanlin at all. As his voice fell, he slightly waved his hand. Not far from him, a young man in a tight robe jumped out like a cheetah. The young man in the tight robes, Xian Qi surged. His body swooped down from the high platform and landed on the square in an extremely vigorous manner. His movements were clean and neat. He looked like he was 22 or 23 years old, and there was a wild, wolf-like aura between his eyebrows. Then the people of the Morong family on the high platform said, "Gong Sun Ing from the Gong Sun family. Who from the Morong family will come and die?" "It's Gong Sun Ing. This guy is ruthless. It's said that a year ago, he single-handedly slaughtered an escort company. I heard that Gong Sun Ying's cultivation has already reached the mysterious martial marquis level." With Gong Sun Ying's appearance, the surrounding people were in an uproar. In Fertile Field City, the name Gong Sun Ying was definitely not unfamiliar. "Chinjun, you're up. Be careful. Don't fight recklessly." Murong Han Ken looked at Gong Sun Ying in the square and slightly frowned. He waved his hand to Murong Chinjun beside him. Yes, Murong Chinjun had a stomach full of discomfort. He looked at Gong Sun Ying in the square. Although his expression was slightly solemn, he seemed to have some confidence. He nodded his head in response. Then he leaped into the air and landed on the square. Compared to Gong Sun Ying, he was less agile but more eye-catching. As the two young men entered the square, the loud discussions around the square gradually quieted down. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the center of the square. Their eyes were burning with passion. The battle between the two young representatives of the two families was about to begin. Among the people in the square, Gong Sun Ying, who was dressed in a tight robe, looked somewhat neat. His eyes were calm and cold as he looked at Murong Chinjun in front of him. On the other hand, Murong Chinjun's body had already tensed up. He focused his gaze on Gong Sun Ying, and his xian qi surged slightly. He was on guard against Gong Sun Ying's sudden attack. "Don't be nervous. I'll let you make the first move. After all, you're not my match," Gong Sun Ying said to Murong Chinjun indifferently, as if he did not put Murong Chinjun in his eyes at all. Humph! Being looked down upon by Gong Sun Ying, Murong Chinjun thought of last night's encounter and could no longer bear it. He seemed to want to vent all of last night's grievances on Gong Sun Ying. The xian qi under his feet surged, and he immediately pounced on Gong Sun Ying. The early stage of the martial marquis realm is a little weak. Although Gong Sun Ying looked unconcerned, his speed was like a wild wolf. His xian qi surged, causing the space to tremble. Bang, bang, bang. In a short moment, the two representatives of the younger generation collided with each other. Their speed was as fast as lightning. Among the spectators, there were not many who could clearly see the two people's moves. They could only vaguely see the two people in the square, colliding with each other in a short period of time. Powerful xian qi collided with each other, and a low muffled sound of energy resounded. Swish, swish, the figures in the square flickered. From the beginning, they were fighting fiercely without any probing. On the high platform, the experts from the various forces were watching the square. They were watching more carefully than the surrounding spectators. The people from the Morong family all had serious expressions. Chapter 582. Bang! After exchanging a few blows, a muffled sound rang out, and Murong Chinjuan's body was forcefully pushed back. As he staggered back, Murong Chinjuan's face turned pale. He quickly formed a seal with his hands, and the mysterious runes on his talisman flickered. Then a ferocious demonic beast that looked like a tiger and a lion surrounded him. The demonic beast's body was huge, and its aura spread out. Lion and tiger demonic beast. Looking at Murong Chinjuan's pulse spirit, Du Xiaofu's eyes flickered. Although the lion and tiger demonic beasts were not on the heavenly beast ranking, they were definitely strong on the earth beast ranking. They were mutated beasts left behind by the lion and tiger demonic beasts. Less than 1% of them could survive. However, any lion and tiger demonic beast that survived would be able to obtain the bloodline of both the lion and tiger demonic beasts. They were extremely powerful, and their strength was comparable to the heavenly beast ranking. Roar! The lion and tiger demonic beast roared, and the sound waves were so loud that it made people tremble. Then the lion and tiger pounced on Gong Sun Ing together with a storm-like energy storm. Is it activating the pulse spirit? Looking at Morong Chinjuan's pulse spirit, Gong Sun Ing seemed to have been prepared. Therefore, he didn't pay much attention to it. He formed a seal with his hands, and the mysterious runes in front of him condensed. Then, a huge demonic wolf shadow appeared in his palm. Roar! The demonic wolf shadow was huge and looked like a living creature. It hit the lion and tiger demonic beast pulse spirit with lightning speed. Roar! The two demonic beasts collided, and the broken runes shone brightly. Waves of roars swept across the sky. So strong! No wonder they are the elites of the younger generation of the Morong and Gong Sun family. The surrounding onlookers stared intently. Their shouts converged and finally reverberated endlessly in the square like thunder. Sai, they are going to lose. Although Du Xiaofu did not have much interest in a fight of this level, he still carefully observed the martial skills that the two of them displayed and the activation of their pulse spirits. It seemed that he already knew who would emerge victorious in the end. Sizzle! Not long after Du Xiaofu's words, a huge change occurred in the square. Murong Qinjuan's lion and tiger demonic beast pulse spirit was torn by the demonic wolf demonic beast pulse spirit. Martial Marquis, you are not enough. Gong Sanying's figure instantly appeared in front of Murong Qinjun, like a ferocious wolf pouncing on its prey. Gong Sanying suddenly unleashed an extremely fierce attack. Waves of ferocious qi surged and crashed into Murong Qinjuan's defense like a bomb. Bam, bam, bam. Gong Sanying's attacks were as fast as thunders, shattering the former's defense as easily as crushing dry weeds. A few fierce punches heavily landed on the former's chest. PFFF, Murong Qinjun, Bamza's devil. Gong Sun be swish. However, at this moment, Murong Qinjun spat out a mouthful of blood. Wrapped in his profound qi, it condensed into a blood arrow and shot directly at Gong Suning. Humph! Gong Suning snorted and waved his hand to disperse the blood arrow that Murong Qinjun had spat out. The blood arrow exploded and turned into a bloody mist, causing Murong Qinjuan's body to freeze instinctively. I lost! At the same time, Murong Qinjun quickly retreated from the square. Murong Qinjuan's face was ghastly pale. Admitting defeat and leaving the arena was also a humiliation. However, compared to his own life, Murong Qinjun had no choice but to do so. This time, the rules of the competition between the two clans stated that one was responsible for one's own life and death unless one withdrew from the competition. You sure are quick to escape. Du Xiaofu smiled indifferently. Murong Qinjuan's cultivation was not strong enough, but his speed and means of escaping were not bad. To a certain extent, he had some skills, although they were not good enough to be seen in public. Seeing Murong Qinjun withdraw from the arena and admit defeat, the Murong family members felt somewhat embarrassed. Not only had they lost the battle, but they had also lost their lives. However, they could not blame Murong Qinjun. They were very clear about the Gong Sun family's purpose. If Murong Qinjun continued to fight, it was easy to imagine what would happen to him. Therefore, in their hearts, they supported Murong Qinjuan's decision. Compared to one's life was indeed more important. This kind of sacrifice was not worth it. I've lost one round. Murong Xiang's delicate face was dignified as she clenched her fists tightly. Humph! Are the Murong family members all so cowardly? Seeing Murong Qinjun withdraw from the arena and admit defeat, Gong Suning was so angry that he stomped his feet, causing the ground to crack. Gong Sunying's goal was not to defeat Murong Qinjun, but to kill him directly. However, he did not expect Murong Qinjun to run away faster than a rabbit. In the Murong family's lineup, the white-clothed youth who looked to be about 24 or 25 years old stood up. His pale face slightly froze as he stood up. With a light tap of his foot, his figure suddenly swept down the square. Swoosh! the white-clothed figure descended from the high platform and landed in front of Gong Sunning in the square, drawing a perfect arc in the air. His white robe fluttered lightly. The youth's delicate features carried a touch of charm. His slightly tight-fitting white robe revealed his perfect figure. He looked at Gong Sunning in front of him and said, "The Morong family has never had cowards. Loser, you're not my match. Let's find someone else." Gong Sun-ing looked at the man in front of him with an extremely ugly expression. He also had some misgivings. Then a cold smile appeared on his face as his eyes emitted a frightening chill. He said, "Morong Xiao Rue, don't be arrogant. Someone will take care of you." As soon as he finished speaking, Gong Sun-ing fiercely gritted his teeth and left the arena. On the high platform, a short-haired youth from the Gong Sun family stood up and was about to leave the arena. "Let me go. It's hard for you to beat him. Best of 3. I'll finish them off quickly." In front of the Gong Sun family, a black-clothed youth stood up and stopped the short-haired youth. He had a slender figure and looked at the white-clothed youth in the square from afar. A faint light flashed in his eyes like lightning. "Yes, Brother Bao." Hearing this, the short-haired youth immediately retreated in awe. Gong Sun Bao finished this quickly. "Don't waste too much time. Don't embarrass the divine light court." As the black-clothed youth stood up, another youth who had been sitting next to him slightly raised his head and said indifferently, "This young man was only 18 or 19 years old. His handsome face was as round and perfect as the beautiful boy in the legends. He was very handsome, and his slightly full lips were outlined in an indifferent arc." At this moment, Gong Sun Bao's indifferent expression immediately became respectful in front of this youth. After nodding, he moved his feet slightly and directly rushed to the square. The handsome youth moved his body slightly. He didn't even look around from the beginning to the end. He seemed indifferent to everything, or rather, it would be more appropriate to say that he looked down on everything. It was as if he didn't care about everything around him. As Gong Sun Bao entered the arena, he glanced at the square indifferently. Boom! Gong Sun Bao entered the arena very quickly, causing the space to tremble. His chi surged, but the aura on his body was extremely cold. His eyes were sharp as he looked at Morong Xiao Rue. At this moment, the two figures, one black and one white, were facing each other in the square. It was extremely dazzling. Morong Xiao Rue and Gong Sun Bao are going to fight. One of them is the number one of the younger generation in the Morong family, and the other is the number one of the younger generation in the Gong Sun family. I wonder who will win. Morong Xiao Rue is very powerful. He's at least at the Nirvana realm of the Martial Lord realm. Gong Sun Bao has been in the Divine Light Court all these years. I'm afraid he's improved quite a bit. Back then, Gong Sun Bao's talent was slightly above Morong Xiao Rue's. Looking at the two people in the square, who were quite eye-catching at this time, many whispers broke out among the crowd of onlookers. There weren't many people in Fertile Field City who didn't know Gong Sun Bao and Morong Xiao Rue. At this moment, the battle between the two of them represented the pinnacle of the younger generation of the two great clans. It was even more eye-catching. Morong Xiao Rue, we meet again. Use your strongest strength. Otherwise, you're not his match. Gong Sun Bao looked at Morong Xiao Rue. He didn't care about the whispers around him. His eyes flashed with a sharp light, and a faint chill flashed across his eyes. Morong Xiao Rue looked at Gong Sun Bao quietly and didn't say anything. He waved his hand, and runes spread out from his white sleeves. With a wave of his hand, a long sword that was at least a high-grade practitioner weapon appeared in his hand. Boom! The runes on the long sword moved, and the surrounding space rippled. Heaven and earth energy began to gather. I didn't expect the Morong family's famous Permitha sword to fall into your hands. However, in the entire Morong family, you're indeed the only one who's qualified to use this Permitha sword. Gong Sun Bao's face darkened when he saw Morong Xiao Rue take out a practitioner weapon. He waved his hand slightly, and a machete the length of an arm appeared in his hand. Chi la la! following the appearance of the curved blade. A cold light flashed on the curved blade. Dazzling light flashed on the curved blade, causing one's heart to tremble when looking at it. Immediately, the energy of heaven and earth appeared in the surrounding space. Boom! At this moment, the two people's eyes met. The air trembled, and the clouds began to surge. On the high platform, everyone's eyes fell on the two people in the square. Brother Xiao Rui, you must win. Murong Xiang clenched her fists tightly, and her pure eyes stared at the square. The Murong clan could not afford to lose this round. If they lost this round, half of the Murong clan would belong to the Gongsun clan. In the square, Murong Xiaorui looked at the scimitar in Gongsun Bao's hand and frowned. After that, the Permitha sword in his hand shook slightly, and a strand of profound energy surged within his body. It was like a halo of light that instantly enveloped his body. 2 consecutive updates, looking for fresh flowers, looking for recommendations. Chapter 583. Murong Xiao Rui looked gentle and refined, but the aura that spread out from his body was extremely sharp, causing the spectators nearby to hold their breaths. As expected of the number 1 person in the Murong family's younger generation. As Murong Xiao Rui's aura spread out, the spectators in the square exclaimed in admiration. Even the experts on the high platform nodded their heads. However, Gongsun Bao did not take the aura that spread out from Murong Xiao Rui's body to heart. He twisted the girl's neck slightly, and a faint electric glow flashed on the scimitar in his hand. As the electric glow flashed, even the surrounding space would temporarily distort. Ordinary people would not be able to detect it. At this moment, the surrounding square was completely silent. It was deathly silent. The entire square was at daggers drawn as everyone's gazes were fixed on the two of them. They did not look away, afraid that they would miss any moment. Cough! Among the surrounding spectators, a young man finally could not endure the gradually intensifying pressure in that hostile atmosphere. He coughed in response. It was this cough that caused the tense atmosphere to explode. Whoosh! At the same time, Murong Xiao Rui attacked. His figure was as fast as lightning, leaving behind a series of afterimages in the vacuum. The runes on the long sword in his hand exploded, and a sword ray shot out, piercing toward Gongsun Bao. Whoosh! The sword ray swept across the sky, and the energy at the tip of the sword fluctuated. Circles of sword ray energy rippled out, radiating a large area. The aura was extremely sharp. Gongsun Bao was expressionless when he saw the sword ray piercing over and the sharp aura spreading out. His gaze became even sharper. Clang! Just as the sword ray pierced over, Gongsun Bao spun the scimitar in his hand and accurately blocked the sword tip with the curved back of the scimitar. The 2 energy ripples instantly tore the air apart. The sharp sound of the energy breaking through the wind swept out, causing the dust on the square to fill the sky. Crackle! At the same time, an electric glow spread out from Gongsun Bao's scimitar and directly hit the sword tip, causing the latter's sword tip to tremble violently. Murong Xiao Rui's expression also changed greatly. Swish, swish! In an instant, Murong Xiao Rui spun the Permitha sword in his hand and retreated a few steps. In an extremely short period of time, the Permitha sword in his hand shot out more than 10 sword rays. Every sword gleam that shot out paused in midair for a brief moment. The 12th sword gleam shot out, forming a row of illusory sword gleams. They were so real that they looked like phoenixes spreading their wings. Their might wreaked havoc in the sky. It's the Murong family's sword technique, 12 phoenix kill. Its power is astonishing, and it's said that even martial kings find it hard to cultivate it. I didn't expect Murong Xiao Rui to have already cultivated it. As Murong Xiao Rui executed the extraordinary sword technique, it immediately caused many exclamations. 12 phoenix kill. Murong Xiao Rui shouted as he waved the Permitha sword in his hand. 12 sword rays channeled heaven and earth's energy. The 12 sword rays were covered in runes and dazzling as they emitted thunderous, buzzing sounds, causing the square to tremble and space to ripple. The sword rays were dazzling and had a sharp aura as they swept towards Gongsun Bao. There was no doubt that Murong Xiao Rui's sword technique was powerful. Coupled with his talisman weapon and his own cultivation, its power was terrifying. It caused the expressions of the surrounding spectators to change. Some of the experts on the high platform were also shocked. Many of them inwardly trembled. When they were young, when did they have such cultivation? Seeing Murong Xiao Rui's 12 sword rays, Gongsun Bao's expression turned serious. He waved the machete in his hand, and in an instant, the machete spun like a ring. Lightning and runes intertwined and formed a huge light screen that blocked the 12 sword rays. The 12 sword rays were very powerful and could even communicate with heaven and earth's energy. It caused the light ring formed by Gongsun Bao's machete to show signs of cracking. When the two energies collided, the shockingly dazzling rune energy ripples soared into the sky. It was dazzling and contained destruction. Break! Murong Xiao Rui shouted as he used all his strength to suppress Gongsun Bao with the 12 sword rays. Streaks of sword rays suppressed Gongsun Bao's aura, and runes shot out. Being suppressed, Gongsun Bao's aura became weaker and weaker. The light ring on the machete also looked like it was about to crack. However, at this moment, Gongsun Bao looked at Murong Xiao Rui outside the light screen and said with a faint smile, "Martial Marquis at the peak of the Nirvana realm. Looks like this is your full strength. That's all you've got." As soon as he said that, the light shield of the machete in Gongsun Bao's hand cracked on its own. It actually stopped defending and allowed the 12 sword rays to pierce down. Murong Xiao Rui was confused, but he didn't want to let go of this opportunity. The 12 sword rays connected and exploded with a dazzling light. The sword rays overflowed into the sky and crushed down. Huff! Huff! At this moment, countless people held their breaths as they waited. The outcome was about to be decided. Du Xiaofu sat upright and looked indifferently at the square. There seemed to be a faint helplessness on his face. Buzz! Buzz! The 12 sword rays resonated with the wind and thunder, and their power made everyone's heart tremble. The power was too strong and could suppress and destroy everything. However, in the next instant, the 12 sword lights suddenly stopped as they swept down. Everyone watched as the machete in Gongsun Bao's hand exploded with a dazzling light again. Streaks of lightning that could be seen with the naked eye spread out like a forked tree and trapped Murong Xiao Rui's 12 sword rays. "You're weaker than I thought. It's not enough. It's far from enough." At this moment, the coldness in Gongsun Bao's sharp eyes surged out without hiding. The machete surged, and the lightning wreaked havoc. Subsequently, the 12 sword rays were destroyed, and they turned into broken runes that soared into the sky. Boom! At the same time, Gongsun Bao punched out with his left hand. There were sizzling, lightning flashing on his fist. It was as strong as lightning, as fast as lightning, and as powerful as lightning. Together with the rolling lightning force, it landed on Murong Xiao Rui's chest. Bam, bam, bam. The defense on Murong Xiao Rui's body was destroyed. Blood spurted out from his mouth, and his face instantly turned pale. His body then flew away like a kite with a broken string. Heavens, Murong Xiao Rui lost. This result shocked everyone. Murong Xiao Rui's loss wasn't something that many people would be surprised about. However, the fact that he lost so quickly shocked everyone. Die. Murong Xiao Rui's body was still flying away. Gongsun Bao's eyes were filled with killing intent, and he was already prepared. The lightning on the machete in his hand spun out like a lightning wheel and let out a faint, thunderous sound. It caused the space to tremble, and the lightning flashed densely with destruction. At this moment, Murong Xiao Rui couldn't dodge at all. If he was swept away, he would probably die on the spot. It was obvious that Gong Sun Bao's goal was to kill him on the spot. Stop! We admit defeat. At this moment, Morong Hanlin and Morong Hanin shouted. How could they not see Gong Sun Bao's goal? Morong Xiaorui was the Morong family's only hope now. Even if they had to leave half of the Morong family behind, they definitely couldn't lose Morong Xiaorui. What's more, how could Morong Hanlin and Morong Honkan watch their own bloodline disappear before their eyes? Whoosh, whoosh. At the same time, two figures had already flown into the sky. Two vast auras surged and rushed toward the square in an instant. Morong Hanlin, Morong Hanin. It's agreed that the younger generation is responsible for their own life and death. Don't interfere. At the same time as Morong Hanlin and Morong Hanin leaped out, Gong Sun Chongkong and another elder from the Gong Sun family appeared in front of them. They were already prepared and definitely wouldn't let Morong Hanlin and Morong Hanin save them. One of the goals of this competition was to kill the Morong family's number one person in the younger generation on the spot and break the Morong family's hope. Gong Sun Chongkong, you're deliberately trying to kill me. I'm not done with you. The roar resounded throughout the entire fertile field city. At this moment, the aura that erupted in the sky was on a completely different level compared to the younger generation that had just fought. The four of them instantly exchanged blows. For terrifying auras erupted, causing the entire space to seemingly freeze. Rumble, high up in the sky, the chaotic space was filled with boundless energy. Dazzling runes surged out endlessly, forming a vacuum domain that not many people could peek inside. The experts from the two families have made their move. The square was in an uproar. Countless eyes were filled with shock. The pressure that spread from the sky made the surrounding creatures tremble. Morong Hanlin and Morong Hanin were blocked. Gong Sun Bao's face was filled with killing intent. The scimitar in his hand cut through the space and instantly arrived in front of Morong Xiaorui. Everything happened in a flash. Countless eyes trembled at this moment and sucked in a breath of cold air from Morong Xiaorui. Whoosh! At this moment, under countless breathless gazes, a purple-robed figure appeared like a ghost in front of Morong Xiaorui, who was flying horizontally. With a slight wave of his hand and a sweep of his long sleeve, he directly swept Gong Sun Bao's terrifying scimitar to the side under countless shocked gazes. Chi-la! The scimitar spun and cut open arc-shaped cracks on the ground in the square. For a moment, sand and stones flew everywhere and gravel shot out. Gong Sun Bao's face changed in shock as he condensed his hand seals. With a thought, the scimitar returned to his hand as he stared at the purple-robed figure that suddenly appeared. Chapter 584. Rumble, high up in the sky, the four experts clashed as if they were going to overturn the entire sky. However, the four of them separated as soon as they touched each other. Sensing the change below, the four of them flew out and their gazes landed on the purple-robed figure who had suddenly appeared. At this moment, the gazes of the entire square had all landed on the purple-robed figure. His face was firm and determined, and he had a faint smile on his face. What was particularly eye-catching was the mysterious broadsword wrapped in a purple cloth on his back. It's the fool. Why did he go up? Murong Xiang looked at Du Xiaofu, who had disappeared from her side and appeared on the square. She couldn't help but look at the empty seat beside her in shock. Murong Xiang! Er's eyes were filled with disbelief. She had just seen with her own eyes that the fool had easily blocked Gong Sun Bao's attack. That was an opponent that even brother Xiao Rei couldn't fight against. Who is that young man to the Morong clan? He actually blocked Gong Sun Bao's attack. Where did he come from? He's so strong. He doesn't seem to be a young man from the Morong clan. Did the Morong clan invite him? After a moment of shock, whispers of doubt began to spread all around the square. The experts from the Morong clan, the Gong Sun clan, and the Wu clan on the high platform were all looking at the purple-robed young man. At this moment, no one noticed that when the purple-robed young man on the high platform heard the purple-robed young man's voice, the handsome young man who even Gongsun Bao had to respect suddenly trembled. He ignored the disdainful gazes around him and instantly shone brightly. Bang! Murong Xiao Rue fell hard on the ground and spat out a mouthful of blood. The Permitha sword also fell to the side. When Murong Xiao Rue struggled to get up, he looked at the purple-robed figure in front of him with shock on his pale face. The purple-robed young man was naturally Du Xiaofu. At this critical moment, even if it was for Murong Yu Ruo and Dai Xingyu, he could only step forward bravely. "Who are you?" Looking at the purple-robed young man before him, Gongsun Bao frowned. He had a vague feeling that the purple-robed young man, who was a few years younger than him, was not someone to be trifled with. Du Xiaofu looked at Gongsun Bao and said, "Who I am is not important. You have already won, so there is no need to kill." To be honest, Du Xiaofu did not want to get involved in the affairs of the Murong clan and the Gongsun clan. These two clans most likely had martial royal realm experts and several martial king realm experts. He was only a martial marquis. If it was not for the critical moment just now, he would not have wanted to get involved. Hearing Du Xiaofu's words, Gongsun Bao's cold eyes fell on Du Xiaofu. He said in a low voice, "This is between the Murongs and the Gongsun family. No matter who you are, you have no right to interfere. I'm afraid you don't have the strength to either. I think you'd better leave. You have already won. Let's forget about it." After saying that, Du Xiaofu ignored Gongsun Bao and slowly walked to Murong Xiao Rue's side. Murong Xiao Rue's face was pale and filled with shock. He wanted to take Murong Xiao Rue away. Qi, the aura in the space, fluctuated. Gongsun Bao's figure appeared in front of Du Xiaofu like a ghost, blocking Du Xiaofu from leaving. His face was cold as he said, coldly, "Brat, this is Fertile City. No matter who you are, you better know your place." Hearing that, Du Xiaofu looked up slightly. His clear eyes gradually darkened. He looked straight at Gongsun Bao and said, "What? You want to fight me? In today's battle, you are responsible for your own life and death. Between you and Murong Xiao Rue, only one can go down. If you don't believe me, you can try." Gongsun Bao's eyes were filled with undisguised coldness. However, when he looked at the purple-robed young man, he trembled for no reason. If he didn't feel that the purple-robed young man wasn't someone to be trifled with and was afraid that he would fail miserably, he would have already attacked. Why would he still talk nonsense? Hearing that, Du Xiaofu's eyes swept across the high platform in front of him and landed on Murong Hanlin, Murong Honkan, and the other three who were watching silently. His eyebrows twitched slightly. He then continued to look at Gongsun Bao and said, "How about this? You have one. You have one half of the Murong family. Why don't you fight with me again? If you win, the entire Murong family will belong to your Gongsun family, except for the people. I won't stop you if you want to take Murong Xiao Rue's life. However, if you lose, the other half of the Murong family will leave. What do you think?" As his voice fell, Du Xiaofu seemed to have deliberately mixed in his xianqi so that the surroundings could be heard clearly. At this moment, when they heard Du Xiaofu's words, some were surprised, some were shocked, and some were puzzled. In the end, whispers instantly resounded. "Who is that purple-robed young man? What a big tone. He can actually make decisions for the Murong family? I'm afraid his relationship with the Murong family isn't simple. Could it be that the purple-robed young man has the confidence to win against Gongsun Bao?" Discussions spread out and whispers filled the square. High up in the sky, Murong Honkan, Murong Hanlin, and Gongsun Changkong's faces were all changing. Hearing Du Xiaofu's words, Gongsun Bao's eyes were filled with confusion for a short while. Then he looked at his father, Gongsun Changkong, who was high up in the sky. Du Xiaofu's words were obviously very attractive to Gongsun Bao. If he won, he would be able to obtain the entire Murong family. Without a doubt, he would be able to completely destroy the Murong family and even get Murong Xiao Rue's life. Taking a step back, even if he couldn't win, it would only mean that he didn't win. There would be no loss at all. Naturally, Gong Sun Bao was tempted. High up in the sky, Gong Sun Changkong was also at a loss for a moment. He could be considered an old fox, but in the face of this matter, he really didn't know how to choose. Gong Sun Changkong naturally had confidence in his son. However, that strange purple-robed young man dared to speak so arrogantly. He was afraid that he had some ability. After pondering for a while, Gong Sun Changkong looked at Morong Hanlin and asked in a deep voice, "Humph, Morong Hanlin, can that young man's words represent you?" Morong Hanlin and Morong Han Kan looked at each other. At this time it was related to the entire Morong family. They had to bet the entire Morong family on a strange, purple-robed youth. For them, this choice was much more difficult than Gong Sun Changkong. All the experts in the Morong family group looked at each other. Some were worried, some were doubtful, and some were afraid. Everyone in the Morong family was extremely tense at this moment. They didn't know if the patriarch would bet the entire Morong family on a strange young man. This was definitely too risky. That little brother, Morong Hanlin's gaze secretly moved as he looked at Du Xiaofu and Morong Xiu Rue in the square below. Then he looked at Gong Sun Changkong as if he had made a huge decision. He gritted his teeth and said, "He can represent me and the Morong family." "Who is that purple-robed young man?" As Morong Hanlin's words fell, the surrounding square once again burst into discussion. The Morong family was willing to bet the entire family on that purple-robed young man. Did they really think that the purple-robed young man could defeat Gong Sun Bao? If so, why didn't they deal with Gong Sun Bao earlier? At this moment, the people of the Morong family were even more shocked than the surrounding onlookers. They didn't expect that the patriarch would really bet the entire Morong family on a strange young man of unknown origin. On the high platform, the handsome young man from the Gong Sun family had his eyes fixed on Du Xiaofu and didn't look away at all. "Young man, if that's the case, then do it. Perhaps I should thank you. If it weren't for you, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to get the entire Morong family." Gong Sun Bao sneered as he looked at Du Xiaofu. He was a disciple of the Divine Light Court. Although he couldn't be compared to the influential figures in the Divine Light Court, he was still extraordinarily talented and could be considered a top figure among his peers in the Divine Light Court. Although this purple-robed young man seemed to have some ability, Gong Sun Bao really didn't believe in himself. He couldn't do anything to this young man who was a few years younger than him. Du Xiaofu ignored Gong Sun Bao and lowered his head to signal to Morong Xiu Rue, who was beside him, and said, "You can leave if you want. No matter who you are, the Morong family is with you. Please, thank you." Morong Xiu Rue looked at Du Xiaofu and slowly walked down the square after he finished speaking. "Humph, Morong Hanlin, Morong Hankan, if you interfere again, I won't be polite." As Gong Sun Changkong's voice fell, a cold smile appeared on his face. With a sweep of his long sleeve, he rushed back to the high platform and sat down to wait for the Morong family to be taken into his pocket. Gong Sun Changkong was very clear about his son's strength. He was a martial marquis at the Nirvana realm. Coming from the Divine Light Court, he could compete with opponents who were at a higher realm in the outside world. Could it be that he really couldn't deal with this purple-robed young man who looked a few years younger? Morong Hanlin and Morong Han Kan looked at each other again and could only rush back to the high platform. At this moment, in the entire Morong family, the two of them were under the greatest pressure. If Du Xiaofu was defeated, the result was something that Morong Hanlin and Morong Han Kan didn't dare to imagine. At this moment, Du Xiaofu looked at Gong Sun Bao again. However, his expression was relaxed, and there wasn't the slightest trace of seriousness. He looked at Gong Sun Bao and said, "If you want to win the entire Morong family, I'm afraid you don't have much hope. Do it. Tomorrow Xiaoyu will explode. Let me inform you all first, and ask for flowers to thank you all." Chapter 585. Stop playing tricks. This is Fertile City. It's not a place for you to behave atrociously. Gong Sun Bao snorted, his eyes cold. He was a famous disciple of the Divine Light Court. He had been cultivating for nearly 10 years and had learned many secret techniques. In Fertile City, he was the strongest among the younger generation. He had his own pride and arrogance. Boom! Gong Sun Bao made his move. The surrounding space trembled, and the talisman patterns on his body flickered with lightning. In the end, he turned into a fierce bird made of lightning. Gee, the fierce bird looked like an eagle, but it wasn't an eagle. It looked like a wild goose, but it wasn't a wild goose. Its talisman patterns were bright and dazzling, and it flashed with lightning. It charged toward Du Xiaofu ferociously. It was obvious that Gong Sun Bao was more serious when dealing with Du Xiaofu than Morong Xiaorui. Gong Sun Bao could also tell that the purple-robed young man was extraordinary, so he didn't dare to be careless. This was enough to show that Gong Sun Bao wasn't a fool. Looking at the beast shadow that Gong Sun Bao had condensed with his beast energy, Du Xiaofu raised his head slightly. Among the thousands of birds, how many could be compared to the golden rock? Du Xiaofu stretched out his hands slightly and drew an arc in the air. Golden talisman patterns wrapped around his hands as if they were condensing into a looming trace of golden wings on his arms. Then he directly fanned at the ferocious bird shadow with an overbearing momentum. As the two exchanged blows, all eyes were fixed on them. The purple-robed young man waved his hand in a seemingly slow but actually fast exchange of blows. The purple-robed young man waved his hand and immediately crushed the shadow of the ferocious bird. The moment the two collided, lightning flashed and dazzling talisman patterns flashed. Crackle! At this moment, countless eyes trembled. The fierce bird shadow was smashed into pieces. It couldn't even withstand a single blow. Uffed! Gong Sun Bao spat out a mouthful of blood. His eyes were filled with shock, and his heart was filled with complicated emotions. At the same time, the curved blade in his hand, which was also a top-grade talisman weapon, slashed down. The beast energy that Gong Sun Bao had just condensed was a test. At the same time, it was also a feint. His real killing move was this blade. Gong Sun Bao knew that the purple-robed young man was not ordinary, so he wanted to use illusions to block his opponent. Then he would use his killer move to kill his opponent directly. This could be considered as embarrassing for the Morong family. In Gong Sun Bao's expectation, this unexpected killing move would at least severely injure the purple-robed brat. He had used this move many times, and it had never failed him. Many people who were stronger than him had been fooled and suffered a great loss in the end. Thunder Extermination Saber. As the saber light slashed down, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in the sky above the square. Lightning flashed on the saber light, forming a blazing ball of lightning. A powerful destructive power erupted, causing the entire square and the void to tremble. That purple-robed brat has been tricked. This is bad. The blade light seemed to shatter the space. Lightning flashed and thunder roared, and the aura was destroyed. At this moment, many people gasped for Du Xiaofu. Oh my God, am I seeing things? Impossible! How can he be so strong? In that short instant, those who had just sucked in a breath of cold air because of Du Xiaofu were all flabbergasted in the next instant. Under the dumbfounded gazes, the purple-robed young man was not afraid of Gong Sun Bao's terrifying saber. He waved his hand, and the golden Xian Qi rune on his hand was not afraid of the destructive saber light or the power of lightning. He grabbed Gong Sun Bao's saber as if he was taking something out of his pocket. Crackle! The space fluctuated and the lightning wreaked havoc. However, it was useless in front of Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu's hand grabbed Gong Sun Bao's saber in front of countless gazes. Suddenly, it was as if the space was frozen. The terrifying saber light was destroyed, and the saber in Gong Sun Bao's hand could no longer move forward. The purple-robed young man was able to resist Gong Sun Bao's extraordinary practitioner weapon with his bare hand. It was a killing move. How shocking was this? How powerful must he be to be able to do this? Rumble! Gong Sun Bao's expression changed drastically. At this moment, fear finally appeared in his proud and confident eyes. The Xian Qi in his body surged, and he wanted to break free from the saber in his hand. The aura of a martial lord at the peak of the Nirvana realm suddenly swept out like a storm. It caused the aura in the square to soar into the sky. It was as if a tornado had appeared out of nowhere. Rumbling sounds echoed. However, no matter how Gongsun Bao struggled, the saber in his hand was grabbed by Du Xiaofu, and he could not move at all. If you want the Morong family, it seems like you can only wait for the next time. Du Xiaofu raised his head slightly. His cold eyes were slightly cold, and there was a domineering aura that was integrated into his blood and bone marrow. In the storm of energy, he was like a rock that could not be shaken at all. He reached out his left hand, which was wrapped in golden light and surrounded by runes. Boom! His left hand clenched into a fist and punched out. It was as powerful as thunder, and it caused the surrounding space to tremble slightly. Countless people held their breaths as they waited. As their hearts trembled violently, the fist landed directly on Gongsun Bao's chest. Uffed! As the fist landed, the defense on Gongsun Bao's body was smashed into pieces. Then, blood spurted out from his mouth, and his clothes were torn apart. Gongsun Bao's body was also sent flying. However, the saber in his hand landed in Du Xiaofu's hand. You don't want any more? Thank you. Du Xiaofu held Gongsun Bao's saber practitioner weapon. This practitioner weapon was not ordinary. For Du Xiaofu, no matter what the occasion was, as long as he had something in his hands, it was simply too difficult for him to hand it over. It was almost an impossible thing. As soon as he finished speaking, Du Xiaofu did not hesitate. With a smile on his face, he formed a hand seal and erased the seal on the saber. Then, under everyone's gaze, he put Gongsun Bao's saber practitioner weapon into his own Qinkuan bag. Everyone's eyes were trembling. In just one move, the purple-robed young man had not only taken Gongsun Bao's practitioner weapon, but also severely injured Gongsun Bao. It was really shocking. At this moment, the people on the high platform were even more shocked. Their eyes almost popped out of their sockets, especially the people from the Morong family. At this moment, the people from the Gongsun family all had ugly looks in their eyes. Tap, 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 Gongsun Bao did not fall to the ground. After dozens of steps, he steadied himself. With each step, the ground under his feet cracked. Finally, he stopped retreating. Uffed. Gongsun Bao's face was ashen and gloomy. The bones in his chest seemed to be broken, and he felt a sharp pain. Seeing that his practitioner weapon had been taken away and the seal erased, he immediately spat out another mouthful of blood. Bastard! Unable to bear it any longer, Gongsun Bao roared and formed a hand seal. Immediately, the mysterious runes on the talisman flickered and formed a huge gray python. The python surrounded Gongsun Bao and gave off a dazzling light, making him look like a terrifying lord. Hiss, hiss. The gray python spat out its tongue with the aura of thunder and lightning, as if it could swallow and spit out thunder and lightning. A terrifying pressure spread out, making the hearts of the onlookers tremble. They all changed their expressions and secretly praised Gongsun Bao for being the #1 person of the younger generation. Kill! Gongsun Bao was furious. He activated his pulse spirit and roared. With a terrifying aura, the pulse spirit rushed out like a dragon soaring into the sky. Along with the destructive aura of thunder and lightning, it suddenly swooped down from the sky and covered Du Xiaofu instantly. At this moment, Du Xiaofu slightly raised his head. His eyes were domineering and cold. Boom! Just as the giant python vein spirit ferociously roared and arrived in front of him, Du Xiaofu did not retreat. Instead, he advanced and punched out. Golden light flashed like thunder. Bang, bang. Gongsun Bao's python pulse spirit was extremely powerful. It was so fierce and domineering just a moment ago, but in the blink of an eye, Du Xiaofu's punch smashed it into pieces. It exploded from head to tail and emitted electric light. Rumble! The pulse spirit exploded, and Gongsun Bao's figure was revealed. He staggered and fell to the ground. Blood dripped from the corner of his mouth, and his eyes were completely shocked. Bang! Du Xiaofu stepped on Gong Sunbao's chest and broke his defense. Gong Sunbao's body was also stepped into the crack in the ground. Uft! Dust rose and gravel shot out. Gong Sunbao spat out blood. Gong Sunbao was defeated. He was defeated so miserably. Gong Sunbao was unable to withstand a single blow from the purple-robed young man. In the surrounding square, countless people were stunned for a short period of time. Then, the sound of people sucking in cold breaths rang out one after another. Gong Sunbao, the number one person of the younger generation in Fertile Field City and a disciple of the Divine Light Court, was unable to withstand a single blow from the purple-robed young man. That purple-robed young man had been playing it down all along. With such strength, he was actually so powerful. That idiot strength is so strong. In the Morong family, Morong Xiang'er looked at Du Xiaofu in the square. Her pure eyes were bulging like a frog. She was too shocked. She never knew that the fool was so powerful. At this time, Morong Qinjun, who had returned to the high platform, looked at the purple-robed young man in the square and could not help but tremble. Chapter 586. He's really well hidden. Morong Han Can was shocked. Back then he had some doubts. If Lin Fan was really an ordinary young man, how could he be so calm and composed under the invisible aura of a martial king, realm perfection? Du Xiaofu's aura was so restrained that no one could see through it. However, the temperament of his body could not be restrained. Morong Hanlin clenched his fists and loosened them slightly. He did not say anything, but it was not difficult to see that there was an extremely unsettled fluctuation in his eyes. We won, we won. After a short moment of silence, the experts of the Morong family became excited. Even the old man of the Morong family was no exception. His entire body was trembling. You've lost. Du Xiaofu let go of Gong Sunbao. He waved his long sleeves and was about to turn and leave. After the shock and fear in Gong Sunbao's eyes, he did not dare to be resentful. However, at this moment, he no longer had the strength to continue fighting. He could only watch as Du Xiaofu turned and left. Not bad at all. I didn't expect you to reach this step in such a short time. A faint voice was heard. It was filled with an innate pride. At the same time, on the high platform, an unusually handsome young man of the Gong Sun family stood up. The young man looked to be about 18 or 19 years old. The corner of his mouth was filled with a faint pride. A smile spread across his face. However, at this moment, when he looked at Du Xiaofu, there was a hint of coldness in his eyes. Du Xiaofu immediately raised his head and looked at the high platform. Looking at the 18 or 19-year-old man who had stood up, there was a slight fluctuation on his calm face. He muttered two words, Gu Yu. The unusually handsome young man was Gu Yu of the Divine Light Court, who had fought with Du Xiaofu in the Tianwu Academy. At this moment, Du Xiaofu was also surprised to meet Gu Yu again in Fertile City. Then his gaze became slightly gloomy. Although he had beaten Gu Yu up previously, it did not mean that Du Xiaofu had a good impression of him. Gu Yu had injured his elder sister, Du Xiaoman. With Du Xiaofu's temper, it was not too much to beat him up every time he saw him. Chi! As soon as he finished speaking, Gu Yu's feet touched the ground. Then his body, slowly came down from the high platform. His handsome figure, his extraordinary aura, immediately, the surrounding girls who were watching screamed. Does he know him? Everyone's eyes, the Gong Sun family's faces. From Gu Yu's words, it seemed that Gong Sun Bao Xiaofu and the purple robes Gong Sun. The expressions of the Gong Sun family members changed even more. The others in Fertile City did not know Gu Yu's identity, but the experts of the Gong Sun family did. The spiritual pulse body was equivalent to an outstanding talent. It was not something that an ordinary outstanding talent could compare to. It was comparable to the human king. In the Light Palace, Gu Yu also had an extremely high status. His strength was extremely powerful, and it was said that he had recently obtained a great opportunity, which allowed him to reach a terrifying level. Gu Yu landed on the ground. His pair of dazzling black eyes, which seemed to be able to see through the past and present, looked at Du Xiaofu indifferently. There was a smile on his face, but there seemed to be some danger and gloominess in his smile. At this moment, although Gu Yu could not completely see through Du Xiaofu's cultivation, he could more or less feel an extremely powerful aura. His heart was filled with disbelief. Back in Tianwu Academy, Du Xiaofu's cultivation level was extremely low. However, at this moment, it seemed to have reached an extremely powerful level. This made Gu Yu secretly shocked. Gu Yu did not stop Du Xiaofu just now because he wanted to see how strong Du Xiaofu's cultivation had become after all these years. He wanted to see if Du Xiaofu was still qualified to make him fight. Being defeated in Tianwu Academy previously was undoubtedly a stain in Gu Yu's life. If he did not defeat Du Xiaofu once, it would be enough to become a demon in his cultivation path. Du Xiaofu looked at Gu Yu. His expression was not any better. However, he immediately restrained his expression and looked at Gu Yu indifferently. He said, "What's the matter?" "You interfered in the matter between the Morong family and the Gongsun family, so I can only interfere. Defeat me. Otherwise, you won't be able to protect the Morong family." Gu Yu looked at Du Xiaofu and a cold smile appeared on his handsome face. Over the past few years, he had clearly matured a lot. This matter is already over. It doesn't have much to do with you, right? Du Xiaofu smiled faintly and looked at Gu Yu. He said, "Moreover, you weren't my match back then. Now that you want to fight me, the result will still be the same. It won't change much." Gu Yu was not angry at Du Xiaofu's words. He only shook his head slightly and sneered. "So much time has passed. I'm afraid there's a difference between who's stronger and who's weaker now. I know you're the brave God King of the Stone Dragon Empire and the leader of the Heaven Alliance. However, it's a pity that all of this is useless in front of me. You're nothing." Gu Yu was concerned about the matter between the Stone Dragon Empire and the Dark Forest. Strictly speaking, he was only concerned about Du Xiaofu. Gu Yu even knew that Du Xiaofu had once defeated the human king of the Sky Serpent sect, Lu Kuan. However, if he were to fight with Du Xiaofu now, he was confident that he could defeat him. Gu Yu's confidence did not come from his arrogance and conceit. On the contrary, ever since he was defeated so miserably in the Tianwu Academy, he was no longer arrogant and conceited. Therefore, he had benefited greatly over the past few years. At this moment, Gu Yu's confidence came from the Divine Light Court and his hard work in cultivation over the past few years. Over the past few years, in order to defeat Du Xiaofu as soon as possible and resolve the anger in his heart, Gu Yu had worked even harder than usual. In addition to the great opportunity he had obtained this time, Gu Yu's talent was not much lower than a human king's. Therefore, he did not believe that he could not deal with Du Xiaofu, who came from a small place like the Tianwu Academy. Gu Yu paused for a moment, then looked at Du Xiaofu and continued, "Today you only have one battle. You have no other choice. You have interfered in the matter between the Morong clan and the Gongsun clan, so you have to pay the price. The Gongsun clan has already sided with the Divine Light Court. Since you have interfered with the matters of the Divine Light Court. If you don't fight, then not only will you die, I will also guarantee that the entire Morong clan will not live to see tomorrow. Only by defeating me can you leave and protect the Morong clan. You have no other choice. The Gongsun clan has already sided with the Divine Light Court." Hearing Gu Yu's words, the expressions of the people from the Morong clan and the Wu clan changed. Fertile City had always been controlled by the three great clans. If the Gongsun clan sided with the Divine Light Court, then Fertile City would undoubtedly belong to the Divine Light Court in the future. "So that handsome young man is from the Divine Light Court. That young man seems to be even stronger than Gongsun Bao." The two sides seemed to have a grudge in the past. The people around the square were now much clearer about the relationship between the two main characters. Du Xiaofu did not care about the relationship between the Gongsun clan and the Divine Light Court. It had nothing to do with him. Du Xiaofu's gaze moved slightly as he looked at Guyu in front of him. There was some disgust in his eyes, as well as some chilliness, after which a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He raised his head slightly and said to Guyu, "Actually, the current you is nothing in front of me. Since you still want to ask for a beating, I'll let you continue to remember the feeling from back then." Hearing Du Xiaofu's words, which were cold and mocking, Guyu's handsome face turned cold. He stared at Du Xiaofu with a murderous look in his eyes. Du Xiaofu's expression did not change at all in the face of Guyu's murderous look. He looked straight at Guyu, and coldness also surged in his dark eyes. He said, "Since you want to fight, then the Gongsun clan is also part of the Divine Light Palace. Let's raise the stakes. If you lose, then the Gongsun clan will be mine in the future. What about you? Are you going to bet on the Morong clan?" Guyu said coldly as he looked at Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu shook his head and said, "I think the Tianxiao alliance in my hands is enough." "All right, I'll take it that your Tianxiao alliance is enough. The result will be the same anyway." Guyu smiled coldly, and then he raised his head slightly to look at the elder beside Gongsun Changkong on the high platform. He seemed to be asking for his opinion. The elder's gaze also fell on the two people on the square. He looked at Guyu for a few breaths of time, and then he nodded slightly. "All right, it's a deal." Looking at Du Xiaofu again, Guyu nodded. Although he was smiling coldly, his murderous look was spreading. Only Gongsun Changkong's expression was not very good. His severely injured son Gongsun Bao had been carried down by a few people from the Gongsun clan. However, at this moment, the Divine Light Court had directly represented the Gongsun family without his consent. This made Gongsun Changkong very unhappy, but he dared not say anything. In front of the experts of the Divine Light Court, he did not even have the right to speak. They're betting the entire Gongsun clan. It seems that the handsome young man must be very extraordinary in the Divine Light Court. That purple-robed young man also seems to be extraordinary. He has some background. The people on the square whispered and discussed in low voices. Then they looked at the square and gradually quieted down. On the high platform, everyone's eyes were fixed on the square. Today was supposed to be a contest between the younger generation of the Morong clan and the Gongsun clan. However, in the end, the most anticipated contestants were two young men who were extremely unfamiliar to the people of Fertile Field City. The third night watch has arrived, asking for fresh flowers to thank everyone.